Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another Monday night live stream. Hope everybody's well. Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. We got a good crowd in already tonight. Plenty of you here to find out about the chat on another Monday night. Peter Nicholas, nice and early, he says, first and the best. First up, best dressed, mate, is that what it is? Mr. Trainer Guy is in as well, saying that he's backed several Kickstarters and most are exclusive or end up being cheaper anywhere. Right, we'll get on all that kind of Kickstarter stuff soon. Lord Maiden, hello to you. Scott Longworth, good evening to you. Mark Wright, good evening as well. James Bray, good evening. Super Pumpkin Man and Blizzards, good evening and nice to see you both. Chuck and Deb Taylor, nice to see you. I think that's a new name. I've not seen the chat before, so welcome to the chat tonight. Steve Evans, good evening. Dirk is in as well, along with Matthew Wilkinson. Good evening to you two. Yoakum's in as well, saying good evening, folks. Can't get my head around the Kickstarter thing, so I hope I can get some great advice in the Patreon Discord if any Kickstarter is worth supporting nowadays. We'll touch on some of that kind of stuff as well, because tonight's topic, as I'm sure you all know, is Kickstarter. Are you getting a good deal? And this is not about me saying, oh, this is the end of Kickstarter, it's a disaster, and I'm not saying never back a Kickstarter. I'm trying to kind of shed some light on Kickstarter a little bit, give you a bit more information, and also why I think some of the deals we used to see, we don't really see so much now. So hopefully with the information I can give you tonight, and along with some of your comments, it just kind of gives you a bit more information, and especially if you're new to Kickstarter, about looking for value and about some of the reasons why things are as they are. We've also got Ortega as well, said he can't stay tonight. He said he did find the best Kickstarters to back are the small games where he felt that they need the Kickstarter to make the game rather than just being a pre-order. Yeah, we'll touch on those kind of sentiments as well. Jonathan Wyborn, good evening to you, my friend. Christian as well, thanks very much, mate, for coming in. Palmsy, good evening, fella. He says, let's kickstart the week. We've also got Paul McElroy. Haven't seen you in a little while, mate. Hope you're well. James Zoms in as well. Hello, buddy. Simon Parfit, good evening to you. Arnold Degans, nice to see you, sir. Bloggy's in as well, saying, hope everyone had a great weekend. Time to usher in a new week with our favourite weekly event. How very kind of you, mate. Good evening, Barry Kleiber. Hello, Mark Berracloth. He says, good evening, Andy and all. How is everyone? Answers on a postcard. Timbo Clev, hello, mate. How are you doing? Tim Kelly says, oh, he did. Evening all, hope you're all doing good. He played some Space Hulk today and it was awesome. I've not played Space Hulk in forever, mate. Starky's Man Cave, good evening to you. Simon saying he's only used Kickstarter a couple of times, once for Reaper Bones or War Mammoth, only to not read the small print and see that it wouldn't ship until April 2021, almost 18 months after it closed. Most Kickstarters, mate, to be fair, ship about 18 months after they close. Yeah, we'll come on to that kind of stuff. Chuck and Deb Taylor says, Kickstarter's a bit sneaky. First, I convince myself $100 is not bad. Then the PM opens and I see that I need more and top it off with another $60 for shipping. Yes, we'll come on to that kind of stuff in a second. Jacob says, maybe this will help kick my other vice funding board games on Kickstarter. Good evening, Jacob. Andrew Fairbanks says, greetings. Should I share my experience with the mostly failed Super Dungeon Legends Kickstarter? I've not heard of that one, mate. Feel free to share it with the other chatters. Luke's in as well, saying just popping to say hi. He's watching a mate that's starting Twitch, so want to support. Shall listen tomorrow. Thank you very much, fella. Hello, Christopher Warden. Scott saying, always wondered about Kickstarter games. I did get the red grass paint and handles. I'll maybe mention the red grass one because it wasn't really a Kickstarter so much. Simon York's in as well. Hello, good morning, VJ. Dead Earth Games says, be interested to hear people's thoughts. Yes, Dead Earth Games obviously have Pirates of the Dread Seas and have a current Kickstarter going, and I'll mention that as well as we go, because there's a very big difference between sort of smaller companies, I hope you don't mind me saying smaller companies, or relatively new companies sort of looking to get a product launched, and more established companies, and that's part of what I'll talk about tonight as well. We've got Guillermo, greetings from Paraguay, good evening to you. Jonathan Elgie, good evening to you, Jonathan Elgie as well. Lots of names in. Mark Coxey, good evening. Debsworth's in as well, good evening, Deb. Nostock, hello to you. And Tony Booth Leiden's in as well. And I think we've caught one of the names. The game's saying small. I'm nearly 6 foot. Right, let's get started then. We've got a nice little bunch in. Good evening, Bobby Clark as well. So, Kickstarter, are you getting a good deal? That's what we're kind of talking about tonight. Now, I guess what do we mean by a good deal, and why should we expect a good deal in Kickstarter? Because Kickstarter's been around for quite some time now. So for those of you that don't know what Kickstarter is, I should kind of preface with that. It is a platform, it's a website where if you want to launch something, be that some new tech product, a new video game, a new board game, miniatures range, but you don't have kind of like a financial backer, like somebody supporting your business idea. You don't want to take out a big loan from the bank, basically, with no kind of sort of no record of kind of business. You can go to Kickstarter, where you essentially basically you show people your idea, and if people like that idea, they pledge money to help you kickstart that into a business or into a product, and then eventually, if you raise enough money, that funds, you can then go and make that product and ship it out to everybody. And essentially, it's a really good way for people just starting out to try and raise some capital. Andrew Fairbanks, thank you very much for pledging on Patreon. Hugely appreciate it at $20 level as well. Thank you very much. It's a good way to basically get people kind of to get those ideas. You know, if you've had an idea at the back of your head for years, I could do a board game, but I don't have the money to get started, to get miniatures made and all that kind of stuff. Kickstarter will help do that. What I should say is Kickstarter is not a pre-order, so there is no kind of like, it's not like I'm giving you some money, I'm going to get a product later on, although that's generally what happens. There have been instances where companies have basically just gone under. They've never delivered Kickstarters, so it is not risk-free on either side. I should just start with that. So let me give you a little bit of breakdown. Why should we expect a good deal from Kickstarter? Now, if let's just say a round number of £100. If you're going to buy a miniatures game for £100 in a retail store in the UK, that £100. I'm just going to break it down into easy chunks. That the percentages might change, but it makes it easy to kind of explain it. It's kind of roughly going to be split about 4 ways. So let's say 25%, £25 of that goes on manufacturing, production costs, hiring artists, hiring sculptors, getting your miniatures made, all that kind of stuff. So there's £25 of that £100 that you've spent is basically in raw materials and production costs. Another £25 of that maybe goes to the producer, the publisher, the person that is selling that game. That's their profit. Another £25 will then go to a distributor maybe. So basically what will happen is, if you are a company, there is no way you're going to basically ship sort of 5 copies to a friendly local gaming store in the south of England, and you're going to send another 20 copies off to one in North America, and you're going to send 10 copies off to Australia. That's not how that works. What you tend to do is, you need to work in bigger numbers. So what you do is you bring on a distributor and you sell them, let's just say 5,000 copies, and that distributor then distributes them around the world as part of a bigger network. So let's say that they take £25 of that profit, of that £100, sorry. And then it gets to your friendly local gaming store, you go and hand over your £100, and that friendly local gaming store gets £25 for it. They've paid £75 from it. That £25 that's left basically goes to the store. Those are really rough things, and there's a lot of different things that are in there as well. So if you imagine it costs £25 to produce it, the company sells it for £50 to the distributor, and they take their £25. The distributor sells it to the friendly local gaming store for £75, and they take their £25, and then the retail store sells it to you, and they take their £25. That's a very rough kind of way to say it. Kickstarter is very different, because you essentially take out the distributor and you take out the friendly local gaming store. So that game might still cost you £25 to produce and get all the bits and pieces, all your raw materials, all your manufacturing costs. And that game may still sell at Kickstarter for £100. The difference being now is that £75 goes to the publisher. Yes, there's like 10% costs that Kickstarter take. Kickstarter take 10% basically as a fee for using their platform. There still might be some kind of distribution costs as well, because some companies like Mythic Games, for example, use a company who basically take all of that and then send them out around the world. Mantic Games, for example, get them all shipped in bulk to Mantic HQ, and then they take care of shipping themselves. However, the other side of it is that when it comes to Kickstarter, you can pay quite a hefty shipping fee. So the more boxes you buy, the bigger your Kickstarter, the bigger your shipping fee will be. So some of those shipping costs you're actually paying for rather than the manufacturer paying for. Now this is one of the reasons why Kickstarter people expect a good deal, because what they think is, well, the manufacturer is making more, or the producer, the publisher is making more profit on this. They're making a bigger margin, so they can either give us it for a little bit cheaper because they're still making a healthy profit and we get to pay a little bit less for it. Or what they do is they still charge us that £100, but they pack it out with extra stuff. You give us like sort of extra minis and bits and pieces. That's why everybody thinks Kickstarter should be a good deal. Sadly, that's not always how it happens. I'm just looking through my notes here as well. If you think of something like Conan by Monolith, they said that basically when it got to retail, they couldn't sell the game at retail and still make any money on it, which is why their next game, Batman Gotham City Chronicles, was Kickstarter only. So there's a few different bits and pieces in there as well. And I'll come on to retail prices and stuff as well. Now, why is this not the same for everybody? If you're a large company versus a small company, there's two basic kind of differences. Kickstarter tends to be either sort of smaller businesses just trying to get something off the ground, and then there is bigger companies, people like Simon, people like Mantic, for example. I say bigger companies in the miniature gaming world, shall we say. They might not be big companies, but they've got more experience, they've got more turnover than kind of like one man at home doing this kind of part-time kind of thing. The smaller companies, the first-time ones, they essentially need the profits from Kickstarter to make sure that this thing actually funds. They don't have a lot of money, kind of like sort of cash to invest in tooling and development and all that kind of stuff. And actually, there's quite a lot of upfront costs for these smaller companies. Before you can even get something to Kickstarter, you need to have spent quite some money on some kind of marketing bits and pieces. You need to spend money on some on a sculptor. Even if you physically don't have a mold made for it, you'll need 3D renders to kind of show people what they can expect. If it's a game, you have to have some kind of sort of, the rules at least have to be sort of semi-done in a way that you can explain to people what they're actually going to be buying. So for a smaller company, somebody that's maybe working on their own or a couple or somebody, there's a lot of upfront costs, and that might mean people taking out loans, running up credit card bills, spending their life savings just to get it to a point where they can then put it to Kickstarter and see if anybody is interested in it. Now, smaller companies tend to sell less copies. So what happens is that with Kickstarter, the bigger the scale of the game, the bigger the scale of the sales, the more money companies will make. Smaller companies, because it's kind of less known, they don't have as big marketing budgets, they tend to kind of sell less. Therefore, every single one they sell, they need to kind of keep as much of that profit as they can, because not only are they paying to get this game made, they're probably paying off all of the development costs, and they're probably actually, any profits that are left, they're probably going to sink into getting like production copies made for themselves to sell at retail afterwards, to sell on their web stores, to try and sell to kind of friendly local gaming stores and stuff. So it's a bit of a different thing when it comes to smaller companies. What this means is that this kind of idea of getting a good deal isn't really always possible for these smaller companies. Every penny they make is probably spoken for somewhere along that line, because by the sheer sort of scale of things, they're not selling enough of them to create these kind of big profits. If I then come on to larger companies, these are companies that could potentially actually fund these things themselves. They've usually done 90% of the work. A lot of them have kind of in-house teams. They'll have marketing teams potentially. They'll have people that run the Kickstarters. They'll have made a kind of fancy marketing video. Look at the ones that Mythic do every time they do a Kickstarter. Look how much money they must sink into those kind of like those marketing trailers, if you like, to get people excited for stuff. And then basically what they've done is these things tempt people in to make people think that actually that there's a good deal to be had in this one. Look at how fancy it is. Look at all the bells and whistles. The games normally come with like lots of expansions, extra miniatures, kind of extra bits and pieces. And these ones basically trade on fear of missing out being a real driver to get people excited, to basically not want to miss out on this exclusive stuff. And one of the reasons why they can include some of these extra minis or extra missions and that kind of stuff is one of kind of probably two reasons. One is they're going to sell much more volume of this stuff. So let's just say everybody makes £25 on a game. If the smaller guy is only selling kind of like 1,000 copies versus the bigger guy selling 10,000 copies, it's basically there's a lot more profit for those bigger companies who can afford to put some of that into extras that tempt you in. The other side is because they're bundling expansions and all this other stuff and stretch goals, which we'll come on to, all of these kind of things getting added in. This makes you spend probably more money than you would do at retail. You probably would spend $200 or £200, say, on something at Kickstarter because you perceive it to be good value. And yet, if that was in a retail store, you wouldn't spend $200 on it. You would be looking to see what all of the reviews were. You'd be looking to see if anybody else liked it. You'd be looking to see where it was on sale. And I think, again, it's this fear of missing out thing that gets driven. So that's kind of one of the biggest kind of drivers between big companies and small companies, really. So a little bit about kind of the current state of Kickstarter at the moment. In 2020, there are actually fewer games being launched on Kickstarter at the moment. However, each game that does get launched, on average, is bringing in more money. And this is kind of the effect of the big companies on Kickstarter now. People like Simon Games, people like Mantic, people like Mythic. All these companies that come in and basically, they've got like a bit of a marketing machine going. They've got people who work for them whose job it is to basically hype these things up, cover all over social media. They've got people who work for them or they employ to make these big swanky kind of intro videos. There's a lot of basic options of good games on Kickstarter, and that basically makes it a lot harder to kind of see where those deals are. Now, stretch goals I wanted to talk about. So stretch goals, everybody expects stretch goals now when it comes to Kickstarter. It was one of the kind of like the new things really when Kickstarter started. And the idea of a stretch goal is exactly what it is. It's trying to get you to pledge either at all or get you to kind of to pledge more. Because the idea being, let's say it starts, you come in for £100 and they say, right, we're going to fund at, let's say we're going to fund at £100,000. If we get to £120,000, everybody will get this extra miniature. So all of a sudden, people start sharing to their friends. Have you seen this? If you get on this Kickstarter and we can push it to 120, we'll all get an extra thing. If we can push it to 150, we'll all get an extra thing. If everybody shares it on social media, there might be a social media goal that unlocks something else. And what bigger companies are really doing now is they are using Kickstarter as a marketing tool. If they can get you to get excited about it, because if I can get 250 people to share this on Twitter, we'll unlock like an extra card or an alternative art or something. If I can get 100 people to share this on Facebook, then we might unlock kind of like better quality paper or something like that. These are all things that were probably already factored into the Kickstarter, into the game. However, they're using you as an excited backer to basically market the game for them. And it's one of the reasons that a game will sell a lot more on Kickstarter than if they just launched it into retail. And the idea of stretch goals, it sits in two camps really. One is it's artificial stuff that you probably need to play the game anyway. So if something unlocks at 110,000 and it's a miniature that you need to play an expansion, well that's just, the game isn't complete at the pledge level then, is it? It's basically it's assuming that we're going to unlock these anyway. So let's just stretch some of the content out to make it look like we're basically giving extra. They've all been factored in at the start. That's one way. The other way is, and this is especially true for smaller companies who can't afford to put huge profits Like, because they don't have huge profits, they can't afford to put that into extra miniatures and extra bits and pieces. Sometimes these stretch goals are maybe not the most kind of exciting, if you like. It might be something like, I don't know, everybody gets will sign the front of the rule book or something like that. Or it might be the cards will be double-sided instead of single-sided or something like that. They're not necessarily things that make you get excited about it. But stretch goals have become part and parcel of Kickstarter, so companies have to come up with stretch goals to try and keep people interested. And like I say, bigger companies factor all of this kind of stuff in as well. If this is your first game, you're essentially trying to just get this out there, get it made, and essentially realise a dream. And that's really what Kickstarter was invented for, really. It's where it came about. The bigger companies, some of them basically build their entire business model around Kickstarter, and they factor in that some of them won't be as successful as others, and we might not make enough on this one to build the kind of profits that we like. So what we'll do is the one before we've made a bit more on that one. We'll cut a little bit back on here, and we'll keep some of those. And essentially, they're generating their profits. Mythic is a really good example of this. They until recently had absolutely nothing to sell at retail. And all of the money that business made, they had to basically keep paying all of their staff. They've got to pay their designers. They've got to pay their marketing people. They've got to pay the manufacturers, everybody else. And it's basically, and I don't want this to kind of sound negative of Mythic, but they're almost kind of living from one Kickstarter to the next, which is why they have a lot of Kickstarters running. Super Fantasy Brawl will be their first game that you can actually buy at retail very soon. And up until that point, basically, it's not like they have an income of money keep coming in from repeat sales. It is essentially basically, we've made some money on Kickstarter, right, let's launch another Kickstarter. We'll make some more money on Kickstarter, let's launch another Kickstarter. And it's almost the profits from one is paying for the staff to develop the next one. And it's just a continuation of kind of rolling stuff, really. So they factor that kind of stuff in. We also kind of talk about like value perception and the retail pricing as well, because retail pricing is really is important. Because if a Kickstarter is too good a price, if it's too good a value perception at Kickstarter, it likely won't sell very well at retail because of one of a couple of reasons. One is either it'll be too expensive at retail. So if I've bought something at Kickstarter for £100, and then when you come to buy it at retail, it's £140. People say, "Well, it was never made. It was never worth £140. Everybody else paid £100 for it." So that will affect kind of after sales, if you like, retail sales. The other side of it is when the Kickstarter has so many bits of extra stuff, exclusive stuff, alternative sculpts, miniatures in it. When the retail one has cardboard tokens, for example, then what happens is that you say, I paid £100 at Kickstarter, it's £95 at retail, but half of the stuff's missing. Like half, it's not necessarily stuff that makes the game work. It's just stuff that makes it feel value. So sometimes this can really affect stuff at retail. Sorry, I've completely distracted there. James Arm, thank you very much, mate. He says he's calling first spot on the BlackJack Legacy Kickstarter. What's the first stretch goal? You'll see that come up on the screen in a second. I'll let you determine the stretch goal, mate. So if it's too good value, it can affect retail sales afterwards. Retailers don't want to stock it because they know for a fact that the vast majority of people who've already bought the game, the vast majority of people who wanted the game, thank you very much, James on now, and the vast majority of people who wanted the game have already bought it, and the ones that are now going to come in and pick it up at retail are going to say, well, it's a poor imitation of what was available before. The other side of it is if the value perception's not good enough, people just won't back it. They'll basically just go, well, I don't think I'm getting value for money. I'll just wait until it hits retail because there's nothing special about it, if you like. And I think this is a real problem, basically. The bigger companies, people like Simon, people like Mythic, pack their games with what appear to be really good value stuff. But what you actually end up doing is paying a lot more money than you probably initially anticipated paying. Because what happens is this FOMO thing comes out, and this idea of I need to have everything. It's no surprise most Kickstarters have this all-in pledge, because there are so many people think, if I don't get it now, I'll never be able to get it. All of these little kind of Kickstarter exclusive stuff. So I'm going to back it to the full amount for fear of missing out, basically. And that's what drives Kickstarter these days. The big companies basically are making people think that they need to have everything. And there's two extremes to this. One is that basically those bigger companies now demand more of your cash. They're pushing you to spend more than you probably normally would. You see that the amount of stuff that you get, and you think it's fantastic value. Look, thank you very much, Arnold. Saying, stop it, I want to go to sleep. You're back on the leaderboard, mate. There's sometimes so much stuff in these Kickstarters that actually it's very difficult for people like me and you to decide whether it's good value anymore. It's like, for 50 quid for 5 miniatures, I can say, well, I'm getting like £10 a miniature. It's not great value, but I really like them. The resin, this bits and pieces. All of a sudden, when it's like you can have 50 miniatures, but it's like £300, you start thinking, I'm getting loads of miniatures here. And I think basically it's much more difficult to assess value as the numbers get bigger, as the amount you're getting gets bigger. It might be that you're just backing it because you like these miniatures, but if you're getting like 20 of the same miniature, is that always is it always still that same good deal, if you like? Shipping costs have really rocketed, especially in the current climate with coronavirus and stuff. Shipping costs have really gone up, and I've noticed it in Kickstarters I've backed, where we don't really factor it in, because actually you don't always know exactly how much shipping is going to be. You might get an estimate. However, what will happen is you'll say, right, well, I'm pledging $80, let's say. I'm just going to take the core box, and they estimate it'll be about $10 shipping or something. So you say, okay, I know what it is. And then the backer kit comes out, which is essentially an email that says, right, you've pledged $80. Where do you want to spend it? $80 on the core set. Do you want any of these extra add-on stuff? We've got some extra stuff in here that you can have now. We add all these bits and pieces in, and all of a sudden that $10 shipping or something goes up to like $25 shipping. And this can catch you out if you're not careful. And especially in the current climate with coronavirus, with kind of world economies changing because of like a downturn, shipping costs can very, very quickly get kind of out of control. And this is one of the things that I find now, why I find it more difficult to decide if something really is a good deal, because I've paid like for a Kickstarter, and then I've paid big shipping costs, and then it's arrived, and actually before it's even arrived, I've seen the exact same one, the Kickstarter version, for sale in an online store where they've bought like a retailer pledge, and then they've taken their 10% or 20% discount off it, and I can have it for cheaper than I paid at Kickstarter. I can buy the Kickstarter version for cheaper than I paid at Kickstarter because the retailer bought it cheaper, because they've obviously sort of been given some of that from the supplier. They've basically done their discount, and then they're not going to charge me shipping because I'm spending over £50 or whatever it is. So there's been instances where if I just waited, not only could I have got it cheaper, I would have got it quicker because it hadn't actually shipped to me yet. And my name's been kind of down the pecking order a little bit. So even value of whether a Kickstarter is worth backing is still not always obvious. And don't forget as well that sometimes just because there are lots and lots of expansions included in with the price, of which you're probably paying more money for, will you ever get to play all those expansions? How many times do you just buy the core set of a board game or something and never actually get to play it that often? Never play the expansions. So that's kind of what I've got a few more bits and pieces to talk about, but I'm going to dive into the chat a little bit now. It's one of the reasons why assessing value isn't easy on Kickstarter. Are you getting your money's worth? Take into account, folks, that when you are backing stuff on Kickstarter, the smaller companies are really trying to kind of realize a dream. They're trying to get something off the ground, and they can't afford to put in kind of like extra minis into stretch goals and stuff because they're not expected to sell that many copies on Kickstarter. They're kind of, their funding levels are almost kind of baseline stuff. It's almost just there to kind of get them over the hurdle so they can get some stuff into production and actually buy some sort of like some retail copies, if you like. It's a very different proposition to when the big companies come in, throw hundreds of minis at you, and before you know it, you've pledged $400. It's a very different prospect. So don't kind of tar all companies with the same brush when it comes to Kickstarter. And I really feel for those smaller companies now, because when you look at something like Simon Games or Mythic Games or something, and I'm using them as examples because they're notorious for putting in lots and lots of extras into their Kickstarters. It's very hard to kind of compete with that. It's on a completely different level. And whilst the bigger companies might have people in-house working for them on a salary, doing design work, the smaller companies have to basically go out and get freelance people who tend to charge a little bit more money because their work's not kind of sort of consistent, if you like. So just kind of separate those two and take that into account when these smaller companies are out there and why they might not appear to have such a good value. It's not about value. It's about how they operate, basically. But Kickstarter at the minute is essentially running on FOMO, fear of missing out. And some companies have made vast sums of money on games. Look at how much people will spend on something like Kingdom Death Monster. Look at how much people would spend on that. And I think some companies are now saying people are willing to spend lots of money on Kickstarter. I want a piece of that now. And I think what they're doing is they are artificially building up the amount of stuff you get to make you spend more on it. So just kind of watch out for those kind of stuff. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about? Yeah, just basically Kickstarter hype is a big enough draw now, I think, and that the deal almost seems secondary now. It keeps kind of products high and it keeps the deals low, if you like. And I think we're also to blame for this as well. There's a core of people who basically will just blindly back certain things. They might like a particular company. They might get caught up in the license or something like that. And I think basically is that companies know this now. There's almost a core. Like Mythic is a good example because they release a lot of Kickstarters. They can almost just back on the fact that they're going to sell a load of them. And whilst they might not be for me personally, I'm sure they are for other people. There's a lot of a lot of those games are basically sold on how much stuff you get potentially versus on how good the game is, if you like. Right, I'm going to quickly jump into the chat because that was a lot of what I was kind of talking about. I'm going to dive in and pick up some bits and pieces. I'll just dive in with VG here. I suppose Mantic have to make the most of the Hellboy license, but I wish they would put the effort into their mainline original titles. The thing is with Mantic, mate, to be fair, is a lot of their stuff were kickstarted. So Dead Zone was kickstarted twice. Dreadball was kickstarted twice. Kings of War was kickstarted probably at least twice. Kings of War Vanguard was kickstarted. Walking Dead was kickstarted. So a lot of their games were kickstarted, and that's what allowed them to get those things out there. Sadly, what happens is basically if you bring out a new team for Blood Bowl, it might for Dread Bowl rather, it might not sell a lot. It might not sell much. So it makes more sense to do another big brand, big name Kickstarter and bring more money into the company that way. The companies, it's their job to kind of make money and stuff, so you can't really knock them for it. But it's one of the reasons why a lot of stuff comes with a Kickstarter and then maybe not so much afterwards. Pomsy saying, yeah, they seem to do an awful lot with Hellboy. I mean, to be fair to them, Hellboy, they've only done the board game for Hellboy. They have just announced Hellboy, the RPG, which is coming soon as well to Kickstarter. But I think Kickstarter works well for big brand licenses because the owner of the company, in this case Dark Horse Comics, they'll kind of share it all over social media. Obviously, the license itself, the name itself gets kind of the name out there. I think Kickstarter works well for those kind of licenses. 28mm RPG says, after backing all the Fantasy Trip box sets, they just made a new add-on, but they won't ship to my country, so I technically cannot complete my set unless I go to eBay to sell off. That's a bit of a shame, mate, especially after they've already sort of started the work on it. Brian, good evening. Brian saying, how are you doing? He says, oh man, I'm late. I was trying to get my man cave straightened up. I posted pictures on the page. My water heater's acting up and I need to get an electrician to be able to get the electrical part. Sounds like you're having a few issues there, mate. Timbo is saying about BlackJack Legacy had that with Joan of Arc. Phil Tolhurst, I'm not really sure what he said, but I'm trying to look back over the comments. I know I missed it. Simon Rodrave says, FOMO is such a powerful thing. Looking back, I feel like I've wasted so much money on Kickstarters I really didn't need. Yeah, that makes more than just you, I think, mate. Right, I'll get back to where I was there. Phil Toller says, the way you describe Mythic sounds not unlike some software house. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. It's just that their games are not designed to go to retail. They become Kickstarter only, which is what drives people to kind of, if I don't buy it now, I won't get it at all. Which is fine. What worries me is the fact that then what doesn't happen is until it gets into people's hands, they then start kind of looking at like a 1.5 version or a version 2 very quickly afterwards. Monolith did it with Batman, Mythic have done it with Joan of Arc, and what happens is it's almost a lot of the development work's being done, and it's almost they're just extending that by basically saying we've got this huge amount of people who backed the first Kickstarter. They think they've got everything. Right, well, there's some more stuff for it now. And by the way, we fixed a few things that didn't work quite so well in version 1. So I'm sorry, all you folks. If you want the upgrade bits to make it work properly again, you'll have to back the second Kickstarter as well. And I realise that's not always the case for every company. But it's almost like getting 2 bites of the cherry. It's like two squeezes of the juice, if you like, out of that one Kickstarter idea a little bit. Simon says, which of Mythic games have delivered? I know Joan of Arc since I got it myself. Joan of Arc's delivered. Reichbusters has delivered. We are still waiting for Solomon Kane to deliver. That's massively over. Super Fantasy Brawl is late at the moment. Hell was on Kickstarter not too long ago and is waiting to deliver. Plus a number of other ones that they've kind of either have on in the background. They've just announced like they're going to go to Kickstarter again soon with Darkest Dungeon. They've got a lot of Kickstarters on the go, and essentially it is that just that kind of that rolling ball of as long as we've got plenty of sort of projects in the pipeline and lots of things, we'll get that flow of money coming through because we just have lots of projects going off. There's not really an eye on let's get this project launched, let's get it to Kickstarter delivered, and then let's get it into retail and kind of keep the wheel turning that way. They've just decided to not go down that retail route for most of their stuff. People chatting between themselves there. Super Pumpkin Man says, this is why big companies' Kickstarters can be a little sleazy sometimes. I get why they do it. At the end of the day, Kickstarter, for a company perspective, is a no-brainer. One, we'll make a bigger profit from it, or we'll get a bigger sort of piece of the pie, if you like. 2, we only need to make the amount that people pledge for. So there's none of this case of having like too much stock or not enough stock. We make enough so everybody that wants one gets one. Project timelines can almost kind of, as long as they hit the Kickstarter date and get all of their marketing in place, it almost doesn't matter if it runs late. Everybody's already paid for it by that point. So if some projects are like 18 months over, or not 18 months over, if they deliver 18 months later and then actually they don't deliver, they're 6 months later than that again, so they're 2 years from pledging, people will whinge and moan, but they're still just, they're glad to get their stuff sometimes, and that's wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. Like it's almost like, and I know this sounds kind of wrong, but it's almost like the pressure's off a little bit. The pressure is getting ready for the Kickstarter, not necessarily getting ready for the launch. And smaller companies will probably beat themselves up over getting it out as quick as they can. I think bigger companies just kind of take it in their stride, and they can be like 18 months, 2 years delayed with a game, but they're over here. It's like, never mind that. Look over here. Look at this new one that we've got coming next month. And they almost kind of push that to the back. Steamforged had a lot of issues with fulfilling Dark Souls, but they just kept ploughing on with like kind of subsequent Kickstarters. Mythic we've just talked about with Solomon Kane, which is miles behind, but they've launched lots and lots of other Kickstarters. It's almost like we're working on that. We're sorry it's late. We're working on that. Look at this new shiny thing. Smaller companies couldn't possibly do that because there's just not the resources to be able to concentrate on another Kickstarter to bring more money in when we haven't finished the last one, if you like. Tony said, I bought the League of Infamy Heroes in resin and I love the minis and wanted the lovely resin models. If they go for sale after Kickstarters, I'm fine with that. I'm sure they probably will go for sale after Kickstarter. I mean, I can't imagine they're going to make molds and then not sell them later down the line. Like I say, it all depends upon what you want. If you think you're getting value for money, that's absolutely fine. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your money, and I don't mean you, Tony. I mean anybody. It's your money. You can spend it on whatever you like. All I'm trying to say is that sometimes you'll get pulled in because of this idea of exclusive stuff that I'll only get at this time. Do you really want it? Is it really adding value, or are you just getting caught up in the hype and the fear of missing out? VG says some of the Kickstarters, once they deliver, are just too big, like Skull Tales Full Sail. Do you know what it is, mate? Joan of Arc was like that. It was just unbelievable. I was fortunate. Mythic sent me a copy of it, a full all-in pledge copy to take a look at. So I didn't personally pay for it myself, but I'll be honest, there's just too much stuff there. It's hot. It was difficult to play initially anyway, because the rules were all over the place, and most of the stuff's like been out of the box once when I had a look at it. It's just piled up on a shelving unit now because there's too much stuff in there. If I'd paid for that myself, it probably would have been £600 worth of Kickstarter money. That's just crazy. That's the kind of money you spend if you're only going to play one game again, kind of thing. VJ saying he backed them both and they both sat on the couch, under the couch in his studio. Yeah, and I think a lot of people do, mate. It's almost like some people spend the money just because they want to be part of the ride, if you like. Michael Burke, good evening, Michael. Says Kickstarter take their cut, and if anything goes wrong, well, it's tough, but they still take their cut and the backers get stuffed. That's why I don't use Kickstarter after backing Myth and Dark Souls. To be fair, mate, Kickstarter are just a website that are enabling that kind of transaction, really. Once it funds, that's the point Kickstarter take their money. That's the point where Kickstarter have no responsibility for it. They've enabled it to basically to be managed and to go on their platform. In the same way, to be fair, like any company could set up their own like website and take kind of platform, take like pre-order type stuff, if you like. So I wouldn't necessarily blame Kickstarter for it. They're a middleman, really. They're like PayPal, I guess. Well, no, it's not true because PayPal's like a bank now. But they're just something. They're like a middleman to enable a transaction, and they take a cut for it, basically. Phil says, I wanted to back the alternate World War II Dungeon Delve Kickstarter, whose name escapes me, but from what I heard, the rules were a mess in the end, and I think that's a big worry. I think you're talking about Reich Busters, mate. I think if you're talking about Mythic there, after everybody was talking about them. James said, calling it night, 2 hours sleep last night, caught up with him, have fun. Take care, mate. I will catch you in the Discord tomorrow. VG saying, that's a nice way of putting it, more like the grumpy troll under the bridge. Simon Drave says the bulk of some Kickstarters is so exciting on paper, but when it arrives, it's overwhelming. I completely agree, mate. There's just too much stuff in there. Absolutely. And this is what I mean about actually. This is what I mean about. It looks like it's good value. I'll spend $200 because you're getting loads of stuff, and then when it comes, it's like there's just too much stuff to do anything with it. I will never use all of that kind of stuff. And it's really made me reassess Kickstarter. That is because I've had too many Kickstarters come that basically put me off because there's too much stuff in it. And that might sound counterproductive, but basically when it actually arrives and you've got those big boxes and you've got to put them somewhere, and let's be fair, how many times do we really play those games? If we all just played one game like every weekend for a year, they might be good value. If we're going to play it twice, is it really good value? Dead Earth Games says, this is Kickstarter's fault for including shipping costs as part of the stretch total, which it isn't. I can't pay the manufacturer if I had to pay postage to the USA, which they counted as profit. Yeah, I agree with that, mate. And obviously from Kickstarter's point of view, they're going to want to... They do this, I think, I've been told this, is because what used to happen was that people would up their shipping costs and drop the price of the game, so that basically they made more of the profit and Kickstarter didn't take their cut. I think this way really, what most companies will do is they'll just include that 10% Kickstarter fee on the price, basically. So if it was going to cost $90, it now costs $99 basically. Timbo saying, taking bets on how far Andy is behind the chat. I'm actually only 15 minutes, mate, now. I'm kind of catching up. Super Pumpkin Man says, I have a few things from England recently and shipping was about $14, but one order was 3 boxes of stuff and the other one was just 1 box. They cost the same. Yeah, I know that the fees are all over the place at the minute, mate, but as an example, I think, what was it? There was one that I backed and the shipping fees were like a real shock. I think it was Super Fantasy Brawl, to be fair. When it got to paying the fee, I know a lot of people felt the same way because they actually pulled back. Some people dropped out of the Kickstarter at that point and took a hit on the fee, because I think if you come out after the Kickstarter has funded, you sometimes pay like a 10% fee, which is Kickstarter's money. I think some people dropped out at that point because the shipping costs were a lot more than anticipated, I think. Christian says, forget Kickstarters, help support the channel and get guaranteed rewards. Thank you very much, Christian, for sharing that. Appreciate that, mate. And thank you again, Andrew Fairbanks, for joining the Patreon tonight. I really appreciate that. Wargaming Dad says, Simon made the Kickstarter model and now have set a high bar. They have, mate, yeah. I mean, there are a few companies out there who've done very similar things. But things like Zombicide was one of the first one that really kind of showed that if you keep filling boxes with miniatures, people will pay higher prices for them. And as I mentioned before, I think sometimes the more you get, the less easy it is to assess the value in it. VJ says, I love it when Andy brings his big business nerd hat to the hobby gaming party. I love chatting kind of nerd business, mate. I find the whole thing fascinating. I would love to have kind of getting a job in a gaming company somewhere, like on that kind of side of things, understanding the actual ins and outs, like being in that arena, like the kind of the business side of things for a product that I'm really passionate about. I would love to do something like that. As it is, mate, I'm quite happy to do this for a living. Peter says, I wonder whether Andy sets chat to live and not top. You made me check, mate, but it was set to live. Somebody just saying Corvus Belly went to Kickstarter. They did go to Kickstarter, mate. If I can find it again now. Who was it that just said that? Where was it? Philip Tallhurst, Corvus Belly went to Kickstarter. They went to Kickstarter for Defiance, which is their kind of Infinity Universe set dungeon crawler. And I think the reason they did that is that it was a bit of a risk for them, really. Like, they'd not really done anything in that line before. They weren't sure how sort of popular it would be. They're also not a massive company, to be fair, Corvus Belly. And it's a big risk to kind of go into a completely uncharted territory. They make miniatures. They don't really make board games, if you like. I think it was more about assessing its popularity as well. That game again is not going to go to retail. It was Kickstarter only. If you wanted it, you had to back the Kickstarter, and I think that was them basically just doing it as a one and done. Basically, let's make sure we make enough money to launch it, and we'll make a profit out of it. We're not using that profit to buy more stuff to go to retail. We're just making a chunk of money out of it, and it's maybe not a bad way to inject a bit of cash into a business that way. The Jezerk, good evening to you. Says Simon's Bloodborne has 6 expansions, 3 of which are Kickstarter exclusives. 1 is limited print run, and 2 have some Kickstarter exclusive content. Yeah, that's not too much fun, that, because all it does is it just pushes up the kind of the secondary market as well. It's like I backed Hellboy by Mantic, and I think there was 2 expansions in the Kickstarter box. They are both available at retail. However, I ended up having to pay more to buy 2 expansions that I potentially might never get to play them like fully, if you like. Stocky's Man Cave said, do you think board games on Kickstarter is a downward spiral as people are getting wise to the hype? Not at all, mate. I think at some point it will kind of top out or bottom out even, and I think people will get wise to it. But I mean, look what happened with Frosthaven recently. People went nuts for it. I don't see that kind of, it's not a bubble as such, but I don't see that kind of hype bubble, if you like, bursting anytime soon. I think it's going to take a lot more before it gets to that, I think. GVC Paints, good evening, says, I think there's a psychological effect too. You're buying something where you are comfortable, like your nerd cave, and you aren't having to face an interaction with an annoying sales guy. There's an element of that, mate. I think there's an element of, you see that timer ticking down. There's 2 weeks left, there's a week left, there's a couple of days left. Some people will hang on and see how many stretch goals have come down. Some people will go in at £1 or $1 and then wait and see it at the back of kit and maybe when the pledge manager opens and get some bits and pieces. But I think the idea is that you're not physically having to kind of speak to somebody about it, and the fact that there's almost a bit of a thrill about getting in early. Like, I'll get the game before anybody else does, kind of thing. Excuse me. Unfortunately, that's not always a thing now, because companies, when all of this stuff gets shipped over, in that shipping is a huge load of retail stuff as well, which goes straight out to retailers. Pomsy saying they did the Hellboy bust. Yeah, I forgot about them, mate. Must Contain Mini says, I've had mixed results with Kickstarter. I bought Sedition Wars as soon as it hit retail and almost backed it on Kickstarter. The rules were no good out of the box. It's another thing as well, is that when you're backing a Kickstarter, 9 times out of 10, you won't have had the chance to actually play that game. There won't be any reviews for it online. Some people get paid for their reviews when it comes to Kickstarter. So basically, they will send copies out to reviewers who get paid to basically kind of preview or review a game. That video goes onto the Kickstarter page. So when people come to pledge on it, they can say, oh, here's such and such big name YouTube channel telling me how good this game is. You haven't had the chance to play it yourself, and by the time it actually arrives, sometimes the game that they reviewed is not the game that you get, because they will all say, like, this is a prototype copy, things may change. And sometimes they change quite significantly. The quality of things sometimes change quite significantly. So quite often what can happen is a game will arrive and it's not what you were expecting, or it's not as good as you were expecting. I think sometimes by that point you're just glad that we've got the stuff anyway, and then some people will kind of move it on quite quickly. But if it went to retail, then what tends to happen is real people who've spent their own money start to review something, and you get probably a much more critical opinion of it. I think sometimes when people have spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars at Kickstarter, they almost don't want to say that the game's not very good, because it's almost like that's like admitting that I've just wasted my money. So I think some people will even just say, oh yeah, I like it, I think it's good. Just because they don't want to be seen as a mug. Like, you spend $500 on that, like, bloody hell, kind of thing. So sometimes it's not always kind of like a fair opinion, if you like. I'm just continuing saying, bought Blood and Plunder though on Kickstarter and love it. Yeah, it's a good game. Tony said, Walking Dead was one of my first Kickstarters and still one of the best I've backed. It was my first ever Kickstarter, mate, and I was pleased with it. But again, you got a lot of stuff for that, and some of that stuff I've still never touched. Vijay saying, I don't really back big mini-based Kickstarters anymore. I only tend to back really small portable games. Yeah, I guess a lot of that's to do with your own personal taste, mate, and space, and what games you're actually going to play. But I think maybe less so in miniature gaming, but more so in like board gaming. I think a lot of people get sucked into those big boxes. Lord Maiden says, I've had some good luck with Kickstarters. I've only one of my Kickstarters I delivered was really late. Most of the stuff I feel like I would enjoy, but I go for smaller companies. I backed Walking Dead, and it delivered probably on time, and I was really happy with it. I backed Hellboy, delivered on time. I was relatively happy with that as well. Although again, like Walking Dead, there's probably more stuff in there that I'm ever going to be able to use. I backed Gotham City Chronicles, Batman, was relatively on time, I believe. And again, the game isn't as good as I would have hoped, but there's a load of miniatures in there again. I'm a Batman fan, so I almost kind of like, I'm probably even justifying it now. I'm probably kind of defending it on the basis of I like the miniatures, but would I have gone out and spent all that money for just the miniatures? No, I probably wouldn't have. I backed Resident Evil 2. Again, it delivered on time. Loads of stuff for the money. Was much more expensive at retail for what you got. So I got a good deal in that respect. some corners cut, I would say, in some of the production of like things like walls and doors and stuff in the game. What else have I backed? I backed the red grass handle. That to me wasn't really a Kickstarter. That was a pre-order really, because I only backed it a few months ago and it's already arrived. It's almost like we're going to make it anyway. This is just a massive pre-order thing, just to generate some cash and kind of understand how many we need to make really. I think that's what was there. Have I backed anything else? Oh, Super Fantasy Brawl is delayed, but then I guess we've got the coronavirus and everything else that's going on with that one as well, probably to take into account. Krabby's in as well. Good evening, Krabby Vision. How are you doing? Bloggy saying I've sold more games that I kickstarted than games I've actually played. And he says, luckily, since I had the Kickstarter exclusive stuff, I've made my money back. It's a shame that you kind of feel relieved you made your money back, though. That's the sad thing. Lord Maiden says, I feel need to help and such, but I'm wary of what others... Let me just start again. That I feel need the help and such, but or was that on the back of another comment? Oh, sorry. Yeah, you enjoy to go for smaller companies that he feels need the help and such, but I'm wary of what others they're doing won't back a Kickstarter if the company is still sorting out other things. I think it does worry me when they're looking after like 10 different projects at the same time, but it doesn't seem to affect most people. I mean, like Mythic's a good example because we've been talking about them. It doesn't seem to affect like Hell, still massively funded recently, based upon the fact that people know that they're still waiting to deliver a few Kickstarters. Simon Dre saying the second Batman Kickstarter felt it came out of the first finish. What annoyed me with the Batman was when I opened the box, when my Batman 1 delivered, I opened the box and the first thing I saw was a leaflet on the top telling me that the Batman sort of second edition Kickstarter was launching like in another 3 or 4 days time. And that was like, so you're already telling me that what I backed a year or 18 months ago is out of date now. Like I haven't even got it out of the packing box yet, and you're telling me that there's something else, which felt wrong. Krabby says my signal's pants, but I wanted to drop a like. I'll catch you soon, mate. Lord Maiden says I've seen someone back the Steamforged Games Kickstarters, and they still had stuff coming 18 months afterwards. I didn't back Resident Evil. Sorry, I didn't back Dark Souls, mate. So I can't comment on that one. But I backed Resident Evil, and everything came together. And it came, if I remember right, it was either bang on time or it might have even been slightly early. I've had no problems with them, but I'm one person basically. I can only speak as I find. Vijay says Morph's rules for Kickstarter must have reasonable overseas shipping, must have good Kickstarter track record, must have solo play mode, must have a gameplay video that I like the look of. Yeah, and I think to be fair, mate, that's fair for pretty much any games. Like, you wouldn't, even if it was at retail, you'd want some kind of reference video, something to tell you if you think it's a game that would suit you. Solo play, obviously, is something that's important to you. You'd want to know that the shipping wasn't going to be stupid. So I think they're almost just rules for buying stuff that you like. The only thing that you might take into account is if it's a company you've never heard of, but you're just buying it and it's definitely going to arrive because you've got some kind of liability there. If it doesn't turn up, you'll get your money back. That kind of stuff. Deb says, we backed Seventh Continent by Serious Pulp because of FOMO. Thankfully, it's one of the best games I've ever played. I've always wanted to play Seventh Continent. I've heard good things about it. But you're right. You get dragged in through through FOMO on that kind of stuff. VJ says, 100 people watching and only 35 likes. That's disgraceful, folks. There's 105 now as well. I want to see a few more likes, folks. Come on. I can't be that bad, surely. Tony says, from what you've said about Mythic Model, once a game is out, there's no product support or continuity. There's not really, mate, except the fact is they do continue with the game with like subsequent Kickstarters, but it's not really fixing issues, if you like. It's fixing issues, but you've got to pay for them in the version 1.5. Derek Games saying, anyone waiting for your orders from me, I apologise. I'm packing literally as I watch. Buddy, do you know what it is? It's kind of new companies like yourself kind of starting out, sort of small companies. You're working a full-time job and you're doing this kind of stuff. All people really expect is communication, and anything else can be forgiven as long, because we'll touch on communication now. As long as you kind of tell people what's happening, I think people will generally kind of give most companies the benefit of the doubt. I think what really frustrates people, and especially with the big companies, when things are delayed and there's no information, or people feel like they're being given a half story or a half truth, it's like anything in it's like if you haven't paid your phone bill kind of thing, just contacting them and saying I'm having a few problems, can I pay you next month, goes a lot further than just not paying at all kind of thing. And I think it's the same with Kickstarter. So I wouldn't beat yourself up about it. I know you do, because you're a small business owner, and that's what people do. I do it as well when I'm late on stuff, because you take it all personally. But yeah, communication is key with this kind of stuff. Phil says, with things like Blackstone Fortress, Warcry, and Kill Team, do you think GW has looked at Kickstarter and stolen the best bits, but not needed to use Kickstarter itself? I think what they've done, mate, is they have upped their game because of Kickstarter. They realised that other companies were getting close to them with quality of miniatures, because one of the things that held companies back was they didn't have bottomless pits of cash to invest in tooling and hire the best sculptors and all of that kind of stuff. Once Kickstarter came along, all of a sudden these companies had the chance to do that. And I think board games, people like Simon, people like Fantasy Flight, even pushed GW a bit, because they realised they were being challenged from companies that they probably never even saw as a competitor at one time, because people only have so much money to spend. So I'm not sure they're necessarily following the Kickstarter model, but they certainly, I think it certainly pushed them to improve. GVC Paints, I think a lot of people go on hoping their game is the next 40k for success, but tend to do too much. The Two Fort Lardy's approach of a solid game first, then add one, is better in the long term. I think the problem is, mate, if you're a relatively small company, sometimes you can't afford to do that, because basically what happens is you don't make enough money off the residual sales. You might make a lump up front when something's new and it's hot and it's exciting, but that tails off. And all companies need to have the next wave coming out. They need to have the new stuff coming. GW take it to extremes. They've constantly got the new stuff coming. But it's the reason why every other company, Steamforged, Mythic, Mantic, Simon, everybody else, it's the reason why there's a new game coming. It's the reason why people complain that some games don't get like more releases down the line, because actually releasing a little warband or something will never make the company much money. It might keep sort of some players happy, but it won't make the company enough money to kind of to pay the bills long term. They need another big Kickstarter. They need another brand new launch. So it's just a business model basically. But I do understand what you're saying. Simo Drave says that's true. The big companies can mug you off in a way you couldn't with stores. Yeah, and you've essentially got no real comeback. That's the sad thing, is that it's a case of like, what are you going to do? You could ask for your money back, but it's not really going to hurt the company unless everybody asks for their money back. Then they're really screwed. But yeah, and what tends to happen is, especially with the games with a big crowd of people backing it, is anybody that kind of sounds a bit negative very quickly gets shouted down, because there's this whole fear of missing out. There's this whole kind of fanboyism that kind of like surrounds some of these companies. And if you're the voice that goes like, this is not on, I'm like, this is like 6 months overdue now, what's going on? You'll always get a raft of people that will come back at you and go, oh, 6 months is nothing. I waited 2 years for so-and-so, or have you never done Kickstarter before? 6 months is nothing. It's almost like there's an inbuilt excuse when there's a lot of people, because fans will defend some of these companies, if you like. Timbo saying, short one, I remember you saying, mate, you had to get up for work. Take care, buddy. VJ saying, Super Fantasy Ball, he got off that hype train. I'm still really looking forward to it, mate. It's a great game. I was fortunate enough to play it, and I'm happy with what I've backed. I just wish it had shipped. It was due in March. It hasn't arrived yet, but it's getting closer. Production's kind of looks like it's almost finished now. So I'll be pleased when it comes. I'm just a bit disappointed it's late, that's all. Cyber Dragon says, then there are games like The Other Side from Weird, which seem to have been all but abandoned by the company. I'm thinking of selling mine off. It's interesting that, mate, because I remember that Kickstarter, that one was delayed quite massively as well. And for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to have done anything. Now, there's two reasons for that. One is they never really kind of put their heart and soul into the retail side of it, which is a shame. Or the game just wasn't that good. And when it actually shipped out to backers, they were actually massively disappointed with it. I've never played it, so I can't comment. I can't really see which one it is, but it definitely feels like it kind of fell off the face of the earth, that one. Chris Richardson, good evening. It says, any thoughts on Legend of Singdom? Does that strike you as a good deal? I'm not familiar with that particular game, mate, so I can't really comment on that one. Scott says, he's talking to Dead Earth Games. Nostock, good evening, mate. It says, weird to Peter, we've abandoned everything. Weird's a funny one, actually, because I contacted them not too long ago. I had a meeting set up with them at Adepticon. And because Adepticon got cancelled, I basically contacted them again and said, look, are you interested in kind of doing something together? I actually had a phone conversation with somebody from there, and it was a really, really positive conversation. They asked me, it said, it sounds great, put all the details in an email. I mailed them, and then it was as if they'd fell off the face of the earth. They basically just never replied to me, never got back to me. I've chased it up, never got a response to my mails. And it's a shame because their miniatures are fantastic. I used to love Malifaux as a game, but I don't see them kind of I don't see them making YouTube videos. I don't see, like, they've obviously got their Gen Con stuff at the minute, which is that nice kind of Streets of Rage inspired Gen Con edition that they do every year. But you never really hear from them much. It's weird. Super Pumpkin Man says, I'm looking at a Joan of Arc game right now, and yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff in this game. It's fantastic stuff. I've just not really got any use for it anywhere else. It's a completely different scale to anything else. And I'm not really sure where else I could use it. That's the problem. I mean, some of the dragons and the monsters, like the dragon and the monsters and stuff, I might paint up and use them in things like Warcry is like monsters and the Monsters and Mercenaries campaigns and stuff. They'd probably be good in like D&D type adventures. But yeah, I'm glad I didn't kind of pay a fortune for it myself. Cyberdragon says, Joan of Arc was insane, but love it. Similar to Mythic Battles Pantheon, they are both overwhelming and hard to store, and probably too much. Yeah, I was less keen that as somebody new coming to that kind of game, there was too many errors basically, and it shouldn't have to be put right by some nice people in the community sorting it out. Dead Earth Games is saying there, the stuff currently on Kickstarter will be in retail in November. See, that to me is fantastic. Like, nobody's waiting 18 months for that kind of stuff. And yes, I should just say as well, Dead Earth Games, if anybody is interested in Pirates of the Dead Seas, please do go and check it out on Kickstarter. They've basically got a new faction coming for the game. Go and check it out. I think it's already funded, but there's not long left to go. Please do go and check it out. Christian says he's still waiting on his dragon from Joan of Arc 1.5. I know it was delayed due to copyright issues, but it's still going to be a while before I get it. See, that kind of stuff, mate. There was a big legal dispute, wasn't there, about it? And that's basically dragged that on and on. But what you've ordered has been made before. There's actually nothing else waiting for that kind of stuff. That's a real shame that you're still waiting. Andrew Fairbanks says Super Dungeon was a chibi style dungeon crawl. I remember that one, mate. I think, hasn't Margot just been painting some of those recently? He says went fine through at 1.0 and 1.5 books that was different and updated the rules. Legends was a 2.0 relaunch of 1.0 plus an RPG add-on made 1.2 million. Yeah, and I think what happens is there's almost that element of, right, this is only going to launch on Kickstarter, come and get it now. So there's this fear of missing out. And then very quickly after it, there's the 1.5 version where not only do the people who did miss out try and get on it, but the people that bought it the first time think, oh, but this is a better version of what I've already got, so I better get on that one as well. Chris says Kickstarter is a distribution centre. It's not even a distribution centre, mate. They don't actually physically hold any product. They don't distribute anything. All they really do is they essentially kind of just... They hold the data, and they basically take all the payments in at the point when it funds on its last day when the Kickstarter ends. They take the payments in and then pay the manufacturer minus their fee. Basically, they're not even. I guess they're only distributing cash basically. VG says, yeah, Kickstarter not holding people to account for non-deliver is a bit of a scam. There should be some kind of sort of legal recourse. I think that's been looked into a few times, mate, yeah. Where to? Samuel Davis saying, Joan of Arc was so huge, I have so little time to play a game as it is, and I would need to divert all of my gaming time for it. Yeah, that's kind of exactly where I feel. Good evening, Josh Hunter. So I think conceptually my favourite Kickstarter stuff is like Lost Kingdom minis, which are just cool minis. You don't have to worry about bad rules. Just plug it into existing game systems. Yeah, I'm all for that kind of stuff. Because it's very expensive to get moulds made, especially for like plastic tooling as well. But even for metal stuff, it's not cheap. It is what it essentially does is it gives a small company some sense of the size of the market. How many do I need to make up front? It allows me to get the molds made and get a big production run done to supply all of this, and it gets me the money to pay my sculptor and all of the different bits and pieces as well, without taking a huge risk of I'm going to get like 10,000 made and then nobody likes them and they don't sell kind of thing. So I get it for those kind of smaller niche things. That's exactly what Kickstarter was designed for. It wasn't really designed for these kind of £4 million kind of huge big boxes of stuff. If something's going to, like, Simon know that whatever if they bring out another zombie side, they know it's going to sell by the bucket load. They could just fund it knowing full well that it's going to sell well. But then, playing devil's advocate, why should they? Why shouldn't they use it as a glorified pre-order system just to get numbers? And almost, I don't want to say trick people because they're not tricking anyone. They're not conning them. But basically, hyping things up to make people probably spend more than they would have done at retail. Jason says, always sell my Kickstarter board games on eBay if I don't play them much. Yeah, I think I should start doing the same, to be fair, mate. Cyberdragon says, I'm seriously thinking of abandoning all mini-games except GW and Privateer Press and selling them off, but I hate the idea of being so invested in one or two systems. But how many games can I play? I know exactly what you mean, mate. I could never just stick to one or two games. I enjoy too many different things. It's one of the reasons that this YouTube channel covers so many different games. I'm not interested in just playing one game for the rest of my life kind of thing. And I'm also not interested in sinking thousands and thousands of pounds into one game or one company either. Andrew Fairbanks eventually come out of the creator bit. So this was about something else. Sorry, mate, I didn't follow the full story there. VJ saying, yeah, Super Fantasy Brawl postage was a joke. Yeah, it was. I pledged for the Feldherr case as well, which really bumped mine up. Arnold saying, good night all, it's been very interesting. Probably the best. I always arrive late to a Kickstarter party. I'm very, very easily seduced. Yeah, you've got to be careful with that kind of stuff, mate. You have got to be careful. Thanks for coming in, by the way. James Arm says, well, thanks to this video, I just completed my Reaper Bones 5 Kickstarter selections in the Pledge Manager. So many dragons. I just jumped up there. I'll just carry on from where we're up to. Miniature Peyton says, I once needed to order some books and the official message to distributors was that they forgot to order the printed goods in the boxes. Books, cards and leaflets, all of it. Wow. VJ saying, grab a copy of Super Fantasy Brawl at retail if he ends up being jealous. Yeah, I think, and that's the point, mate. And he's saying, like, at least he would save on the postage. The way I kind of justified it was I was getting a good deal at Kickstarter and the postage wasn't taking it above what I would probably spend at retail. However, I'm probably buying more than I would have invested because I'm getting a lot more kind of miniatures that it'll take me a long time to kind of get the best out of them. Noxie's in as well. Good evening, Noxie. How are you doing? Sorry if I'm missing anybody's comments, by the way. I'm just kind of catching up on a lot of the stuff. I'm about 5 minutes behind now. Cesar Perez, good evening. Nice to see you in as well. How are you doing, mate? Tony Booth Leiden says, Kickstarter allows larger companies know pretty much how many copies they need to make, so it takes the guesswork out of a very tricky thing to work out normally. It does, mate. And for years, essentially, basically what they did was they used some kind of market research, really comparing it to, how many do you think you want, asking retailers how many they think they would want, and that kind of stuff. These days, actually, Kickstarter itself is the best marketing tool a company can use. They'll get feedback from customers. They get an idea of how popular something is, how much it's being shared, and what people like, what they don't like. They're essentially getting all of that feedback and market research before they've actually produced anything. Where are we up to? Scott Longworth says, night all, it's his wedding anniversary today. Wink, wink. Take care, mate. Enjoy it. I don't know why you're still here, but carry on, enjoy your wedding anniversary, mate. And congratulations to the two of you. Barry says, I backed Death Path, a card and dice game. I pledged to have my character in the game. Friend from a local shop. It was amazing to see what went through as a one-man show just to get it done. Anybody that is a relatively small company, kind of like less than 5 people in a business, getting something to Kickstarter and managing the amount of communication that a Kickstarter takes, like all the way through those kind of that week or 2 weeks, constantly answering questions, constantly keeping on top of it. At the same time, you're trying to actually develop the product that you're trying to kickstart as well. It's a thankless task. Bigger companies employ a Kickstarter manager. Some people bring in a Kickstarter manager for a project purely based on the fact that it's just so much work. And if a company doesn't kind of keep on top of those Kickstarter messages, they're instantly kind of tarred with, well, they're not even talking to the community. Like, there's almost like an expectation that you're there like every 24 hours a day and at the beck and call of every single backer. People see themselves as an investor in a business, and that's not what it is. You are not investing in a business. You have no kind of no liability in that business, if you like. You're investing in a product, and you with the expectation that you get it, but not a guarantee. Peter says, I don't know where to look for Kickstarter games, and is it just tabletop games? It's not, mate. You can they back like mattresses, they back electronic goods, they back like sort of furniture, anything that you can make basically and sell. Somebody will do it on Kickstarter. There are a lot of YouTube channels who just focus on the Kickstarter games that are out there, and if you go to Kickstarter.com. And you can filter it by tabletop games, actually. Tabletop games is one of the most grossing parts, as in it makes the most money of all of Kickstarter now. And it really kind of caught people by surprise, I think. But yeah, you can filter it by tabletop games, and you'll be able to see it there. Miniature Peyton says, well, you helped me with a review on my Kickstarter back then. Remember, your review was also the only good thing about it. I tell you what, Michael, it's tough, man. It's tough doing Kickstarter stuff. Coxie said, I think there's room for both indies and bigger companies on Kickstarter. It should, however, be clearer that you're backing either a big company or a one-man band so you can adjust your expectations. Yeah, I don't disagree with that, mate, to be fair. Because it's easy to think that your money is kind of safe when a big company has a big flashy kind of video and a big intro screen and all fancy 3D renders and the camera's spinning around, versus what somebody relatively smaller can kind of like. They want to keep the cost down, basically. At the end of the day, as long as you can see what you're buying and you've got some kind of faith in the company, don't be swayed by kind of like glitter and glitz. Caesar's saying he follows a few YouTube channels. I showcase them, yeah. And that's another reason why companies use Kickstarter as a marketing tool, because they know there are a load of channels out there who will cover their stuff purely by the fact it's on Kickstarter. So that kind of helps them. It's almost like free advertising in that respect. Christian, thank you very much for sharing the links tonight, mate. Massively appreciated. Simon Dave says, I'm sworn off the big box miniatures games on Kickstarter. I feel like everyone I've bought, I've played once and never touched. I did back the 2-inch shooters, but yeah, definitely, mate. I know exactly what you mean, mate. I almost feel like some of the big ones I've backed, I don't really get I don't get value out of them because I actually don't play them often enough. I'm far better off really just buying something at retail if I'm really that interested in it. Peter saying, are these links available from BlackJack Legacy's YouTube homepage? If you click on the description of any one of my videos, Peter, and anybody else, you will see all of these links. They're on the Facebook page. They're in the description of every single video, so they'll all be there, mate. VJ says, not hard to get flashy motion graphics and spinny 3D graphics done for a good price. Just drop me a message. To be honest, mate, I mean, I think it convinces people that it's worthwhile, I think, and it's probably good value. The problem is when you're a small company, it feels like you're throwing money at something that you might not get a return. Like, let's just say it costs you 500 quid Let's just say it costs 500 quid to get those graphics done. And I'm not saying that that's expensive by any stretch either. But if you're only making £25 profit per box, that's a lot of boxes. That's a lot of extra games that you need to sell at Kickstarter to basically pay for that. And I think that's where, if you're a smaller company, it's almost it's a big expense. Paying people to do reviews, for example, is a big expense. People who go to kind of like Beasts of War or on tabletop and think I'll instantly kind of make that money back, I think sometimes they're wrong, basically. Caesar says, the only Kickstarter I've played often is Zombie Black Plague, but I use those minis in the minis from Massive Darkness for Frostgrave. Yeah, and I think if you go into it with your eyes open, knowing that you've got somewhere else you can use that stuff, I think that's absolutely fine. Peter saying, so it's easy to find the link before the purchase is made. Yeah, you'll see some of the stuff in if you go to the Facebook page, mate, there is an announcements tab. If you go to the BlackJack Legacy Facebook page, at the top is always like what's called the announcements. If you click at the announcements, all of these things will be linked in there, mate. Dirk says, you need an affiliate link for the German Amazon. I just bought a 3D printer and now need to buy resin regularly. I can set one up, mate. The problem is, for Amazon, you need to have a separate account for each different region. You can't just have one account. So I set it up for the US, I've set it up for Australia, and I've set it up for UK just to kind of test it and see how many people are using it, really. Steve said, I only back miniature Kickstarters now as I don't have time to play lots of new games, too many armies to paint. Yeah, and to be honest, mate, there's nothing wrong with that either, and I think you are probably getting value out of it. Not stuck saying do the German Amazon as well. Yeah, I'll sort one out tomorrow, folks. Super Pumpkin Man says, reusing minis is one of the things I look at when buying games. Making sure you can use stuff elsewhere is a huge kind of... That's more about value, actually, than do you think you're getting enough for your money. It's more about the stuff that you're getting. Can you use it elsewhere? Yeah, a few other people saying set up the German one as well. Thank you very much. VJ saying, I didn't know you had an Australian affiliate link. What is it? It's actually, let me see if I can. Yeah, Christian might be able to hook you up, or if not, I might be able to do it from here as well while we're talking, if I can find it. Do you know what it is? I don't think I've put it in the. It's in the Facebook group, mate. We'll get you it. Christian might be able to do it. So I have caught up, folks. At 20 past, I'm going to have a drink. My throat is dry. It's raw. So, folks, that's kind of it. As far as Christian, it's in the Facebook group, mate. It's in the Facebook group. I'll sort it out. What was anything else I was going to say? Yeah, basically they're all in too much for some versions 1.52. I think I've gone through all of my notes. If anybody's got any specific questions or anything like that, I'll happily kind of answer them. I'm not an expert on this kind of stuff, but I'm interested in the business side of when it comes to tabletop games and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that that I'm kind of interested in, really. So I might be able to answer it. Tony saying he uses the Joan of Arc terrain and burrs and badges. I never thought of that, mate. Lord Maiden says, I appreciate your video tonight. It's helped me with understanding Kickstarter a little more and how it runs a bit more. Yeah, you're welcome, mate. And that's kind of the point of tonight. I'm not trying to put anybody off backing Kickstarters. I'm not trying to promote Kickstarters to anybody. I just want people to kind of be a little bit more aware of what's out there and why smaller companies might not seem to be as like sort of good value, where actually they are good value, because essentially what they're doing is they're not really pulling the wool over your eyes. It's the bigger companies actually, because what you're not seeing is the fact that bigger companies have such scale of volume that let's say it costs a smaller company, I'll just say £1 a miniature to manufacture, get them sculpted, everything else. If they're going to sell, say, 500 copies on Kickstarter, it might cost them on average £1 a miniature. So they're charging you, let's say, £2 a miniature. I know that's not the case. I'm using round numbers because it's easier to work out. If it's one of those big companies and they're producing a massive box and they've had 10,000 backers and the thing's made 1.5 million, that might be costing them like 20 cents a miniature, and they're still charging you £1.80 a miniature or something like that. That's the difference. That's why they can afford to make extra miniatures. That's why they can afford to have, like, sort of, in theory, better looking stretch goals. It's just on the scale of stuff. But these smaller companies still need support too. Without people backing them on Kickstarter, without people kind of believing in them and supporting them, they never get off the ground, basically. I'm a small kind of business myself. If it wasn't for the Patreons and the people that donate in the live stream and the people that buy t-shirts, like, I couldn't survive, because I'm like one of those small companies on Kickstarter. I don't get the views here to enable me to kind of just like live off the ad revenue, if you like. I get a tiny amount in ad revenue, almost not even worth speaking about. And so basically, it's about supporting those smaller Kickstarters, supporting those smaller companies that actually that you want to see survive as well. If you believe in them and you think you're getting value for your money, then by all means support them. It's just when it comes to the bigger companies, I'm not saying you're not getting value for money, but just factor in, is it worth spending $200 and $250 on a massive big box that you might never play? You might use those minis for the next 20 years in lots of different games, or you might play it once and it might sit on your shelf. That's kind of what I'm saying. Chuck and Deb Taylor says, I've just been painting Massive Darkness for minis for a year now, first year painting, so I've been watching closely the Massive Darkness 2 for the minis value, since that might be the majority of the reason I buy a box. Yeah, that's pretty cool, to be fair. Super Punkin Man says, Andy, do you have any good experience with 15mm historical gaming? My boss is trying to get one start, so just curious your opinions. I have no experience with historical gaming in general, or 15mm miniatures. I'm too old. My eyes are not what they were, and painting small scale minis doesn't really. I don't get the same enjoyment from it, mate, because obviously I like to see what I'm painting, basically. So I can't comment. In theory, mate, if the sculpts look all right, I guess to the game, the size is sometimes irrelevant. Whether it's a good game or not, but I'm sure people in the chat will be able to help you out. Tony and these Big Geordie workout. Yeah. Will there be a Kickstarter for the DVD series Dancing with the BlackJack? Mark says, not on Kickstarter, but has anyone looked at the Blood Bowl leaked stuff? Was it legit? It was legit, mate. If you look on the Warhammer community page, they've kind of announced it officially today, mate. Vormwood said, the problem with Kickstarter is I feel it swamps the industry with a ton of subpar games sold on minis, and it's almost like the rules are an afterthought. I wouldn't disagree with you, Vormwood. I think there are a lot of companies that basically trade on good quality minis, and the games can sometimes be a bit lackluster. I agree. Luke's saying, hi everyone, is this wrapping up or we're still going? We're still going, Luke. I've probably got another half an hour left to go, something like that. Vormwood saying there's some fantastic 15mm stuff these days. Yeah, it's not my wheelhouse, mate, so I'm not sure. It's coming down. Peter says, I've done most of his captain except the armour. Now, what colour will I use? I can't tell you, mate. I can't even see it. VJ saying he's more excited for a new season of Blitz Bowl than of Blood Bowl. Hopefully some of that will filter down, mate. If they're doing a bit more stuff with Blood Bowl, hopefully that'll filter down to Blitz Bowl at some point. I'm not really sure what they're actually doing with Blood Bowl. I've not really kept up with it on it. Is there a real change in the rules? Are they adding rules to it? Are they tidying things up? Are they consolidating stuff into one book? I've got no idea what they're doing. Pomsy saying, thanks for tonight's chat. I'm going to set up a Kickstarter and take everyone's money and run. It sounds pretty easy. To be honest, mate, you'd be surprised. It's delivering on your promises the hard bit. Taking people's money seems to be no problem. Oh. Cyber Dragon saying to VG's got the original Blood Bowl. They had a hard time getting excited for the new one for some reason. Yeah, I think everybody knows Blood Bowl's not not really my wheelhouse. VG there saying, I'm 100% sure it will with new teams, so I'm happy to see it. I just know which side my bread's buttered on. Tim saying, new boxed version, new rules. New rules kind of surprises me, to be fair, because it's like it's so ingrained. Like, those rules have been around for so long. I'm really surprised they're messing about with it, if you like. Luke's saying, have you got any interesting videos coming out? I've got a pile of stuff, mate. That's all seemed to have come at once. I have Butt Wars, A review of that coming, which is just arrived today. I've got some stuff from War Cradle, which is their terrain sets, and I'll also be doing kind of like a how to play video. I've also got some battle systems terrain that I'm in the middle of building up as well to make for a review video on that. I've got some God tier stuff as well coming up soon. A review on that stuff. Along with, I still got Dead Zone painting, which is halfway through it. I basically ran out of a spray can for something, and then I haven't been to go and pick one up yet because I've had a million things to do. I'm looking on my board now with the different stuff. I've got a video in the pipeline, kind of like 5 tips, 5 minutes, so 5 really quick hobby tips. And I don't want to give too much of the other stuff away either, because somebody else will all make them before I get the time to them. Michael saying there, did the link to the God tier guy work out? I never used it, mate, to be fair. There was somebody else I'd spoke to a while ago, got in touch with me, completely out the blue, to be fair. So yeah, it worked out in the end, mate. Barry saying, Mark Twain said it's easier to fool people than convince them they've been fooled. Do you know what it is? That's really, really true. Nobody wants to think that they've been conned. And that's why sometimes the biggest cons work by people not wanting to admit they've been conned. Luke saying he wanted to get Bot Wars, but the shipping was so expensive. Yeah, I didn't pay the shipping. They've sent me a copy for review, to be fair, but it's come all the way from Australia. I think what they're trying to do is he's trying to get it out into more kind of retailers and stuff as well. So he wants to basically get some more news about it online. There's not a lot of information about it online. But let me just reach over to the box set there. So this is what arrived today. Bot Wars, which is essentially transforming robot combat. I won't say what it's kind of like because it's not. It's definitely not IP infringing. But yeah, it's I've very, very quickly opened the box tonight before I came on the stream. Seems to be pretty good content, but I must admit I've not played the game yet. I haven't done anything with the miniatures. I've not looked at it in any detail yet. But yeah, there'll be a review coming really soon. Vijay says I still have my Blood Bowl 3rd edition sitting in the garage. I've got 2 versions of Blood Bowl sitting in the garage, mate. Still never done anything with them really. I played a little bit, but then basically never really got into it. Peter Cummins says I've got all the card. Cyber Dragon, thank you very much for becoming a member as well. Really is appreciated. VG said I still have, I've just said that one. Peter said I've got all the card game for Blood Bowl from Fantasy Flight. I like that more than the board game. Does anybody remember there was a Warhammer Fantasy game? I think it was by Fantasy Flight, where it was discs and you kind of flipped them over, and that was your movement. You basically kind of flipped discs over. Does anybody remember that? I'm trying to remember what it was called. Where are we up to? Pomsy saying, I would take your money, mate. I consider you a close enemy. Steve says, how's your Kings of War dwarves coming along? Really good, mate. I'm almost finished them now. So obviously the 12-month Kickstarter, the 2,000 point Kickstarter ends at the end of August. And I'm on track to have finished mine. To be honest, I forgot the date. I forgot it was August. Now I need to kind of to put the announcement up for it being the last month now. This last month seems to have flew by, mate. Yeah, going really well. So I'll have my first ever 2,000 point army, mate. What's this? Lord Maiden say, what are they? I'm always looking to help support the BlackJack arenas. I'm not sure, mate, what that was about. Bit of chat going on. Bot Wars, not Bot Wars. Bot Wars. Bit of chat going on backwards and forwards. David Moffat says the Bot Wars I have is pretty IP infringing. No, I have to officially say it is not IP infringing. It actually even says on the box. Actually, it's not on the box. It's on the rule book, I think. It actually says. If I can just that any names, characters, models, and stories in this rule book are from the author's imagination. Any reference to actual names, characters, models, and stories not the property of Bot Wars is purely coincidental. There you go, disclaimer. So yeah, I'm looking forward to giving it a go. It actually looks pretty fun. I did watch a video online just to see how it plays, knowing that this was on its way from Australia. So yeah, interesting. Disc Wars, is that what it was? Yeah, I remember hearing about it, but I've never played it. It's just, I remember it looked really interesting, something a bit different. Simon Davis saying, yeah, he had that. It was a weird one. It was kind of like Pogs, to be fair, mate. And Jason saying he still has the entire set of Disc Wars. VG says, Butt Wars will be almost as good as Clown Wars when I first misheard Clone Wars. Steve says, well done, mate. Yeah, to be honest, my biggest disappointment, mate, has been the lockdown. I think I probably would have got it finished faster if I'd been able to get out and get more games. But not being able to play has kind of like sort of slowed me down. And then sort of starting the YouTube stuff as well, like sort of like full time, has kind of sucked up a bit more of my free time as well. So I'll finish my 2,000 points without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, I would have liked to have been playing more games, mate, to be fair. And Cyber Dragon says, yo, welcome. I really enjoy your work. I really enjoy you enjoying it. Thank you very much. It's hugely appreciated. David Moffat says, yeah, my Bot Wars are forbidden from sight by the author. The new stuff looks good too, though. Yeah, it looks pretty good. What I would say is that it is... the miniatures look really sharp. And I would say the stuff that you see online probably doesn't do the quality of the miniatures justice, because I think some of the paint jobs I've seen online, and this is not from the manufacturer, if you like, but I think they probably don't do them justice. I would just say. Simon Dave says, are you looking to have a try of the smaller points games in 9th edition 40k? I'm looking forward to the faster games. I 100% will be, mate. I'm only really planning on playing those kind of like 50 power level games. The probably absolute maximum 1,000 points, but more likely kind of like 500 point stuff. I'll certainly not be going over that sort of small board size. That's exactly where I'll be playing it. I'd rather collect multiple armies of small points and have options of different things to play rather than just continuing to build thousands and thousands of points of one particular big army. So yeah, looking forward to it. VJ says, speaking of doing cool stuff with things with exciting IPs, has anyone here played Brick Wars? I've not heard that, mate, actually. Superpunk Man says, I need to look Bot Wars up now. Yes. Hendrix says, stay away from Kickstarter, just buy retail, better value if you include shipping. Where were you an hour and a half ago, mate? That would have just summed everything up for me. And Superpunk Man says, yeah, small games. Yeah, small games, mate. It's one of the reasons that I've kind of been interested in 40k for 9th edition. It always felt like a bit of an insurmountable task in the past, like trying to get up to 2,000 points and then playing a game for like 3.5 hours. That's what really put me off in the past. But the fact that actually it feels like it's being supported at smaller point levels, and I found somebody that wants to play at smaller point levels, why would I not want to dip my toe into them and try the most popular game that's out there to see if it's kind of, does it live up to the hype? Matthew saying 50 power level would be my go-to, yeah, starting with Goth Orcs. Nice one. VG says, I'm not really into robot games, but I do like that Butt Wars is from an Australian author. Yeah, he's a member in our Facebook group, mate, which is actually why he contacted me. Yeah. Mallet, I forget what his first name is now. Anthony Mallet. Yeah, he's the creator of the game. Christian saying, Firestorm Games has the Bot Wars starter set, £55 for metal and £70 for resin. I didn't know that, mate. There you go. So you can buy them in the UK as well. Simon Davis says, me too, finishing 2,000 point army is a huge commitment. I'd rather a few small armies. Yeah, I intend, and kind of I'm almost at that point, to basically have like 1 or 2 small point armies. I can be playing them. I can learn to play the game with them painted, while in the background I can potentially kind of have like a nice little hobby project, like a completely different army, something for down the line. Take my time and maybe spend a bit more time on the paint job or something. And my intention is maybe to have that as a bit of a like sideline hobby. I don't really want to kind of like spam spam the channel with like lots of 40k stuff, because this channel has always been and will always be about all of the different games that are out there. So I'm not going to like spam the channel with like loads of 40k stuff, but I'll certainly talk about it. Like it's a game, I'm interested in it. Why would I not talk about it? So yeah, it'll be in there mixed with all the other different bits and pieces. Super Pumpkin Man says, in 8th edition I only played 10 or so 2,000 point games. But I played 3 times more Kill Team games just because they were smaller games. Kill Team it's the reason Kill Team really interested me. It's the reason I love Warcry. I just like smaller games, I think. But I like the idea of playing 40k with the choice of all of the different 40k miniatures in a relatively small kind of playing surface. To the point where I've got this huge big 6x4 table in here. I'm actually considering kind of sort of replacing it with a smaller table, because I'll play a lot more smaller scale games, and it'll give me more space to actually work in here and stuff. And then I've got a folding big 6x4 table that's in my garage that I can basically use if I'm playing like kind of Kings of War and stuff like that. VJ says, yeah, I'm too much of a magpie to play big army games these days. I prefer 3 or 4 kill teams, war bands. Yeah, I kind of do too. Although I must admit, painting up my Kings of War army, like I've always wanted a big army. I love those big kind of like ranked up armies. And painting up the Kings of War stuff's really kind of, it's been a really like nice thing to do over a period of time. I haven't felt the need to rush it, if you like. Peter saying, nothing can beat big army game for me. Nothing compares to 28mm Napoleonics or 10mm American Civil War. I remember what that meant there. Pomsy saying, I'm definitely getting that small 40k recruit box for 30 quid. Those small ones are always good value, mate. They're an ideal way to kind of just dip your toe in, have some new minis to paint. It's almost like a nice little just like mini project on its own, really. So yeah, they're good value, mate, those ones. They're definitely there to kind of like to snag in kind of like those just dipping their toe. Ben Davey, good evening, mate. He says 500 point games was the tipping point for me after 30 years of resisting 40k. Blizzard says, but war was cancelled. What was cancelled, mate? Have they had another Kickstarter that was cancelled recently or something? I'm not really sure, mate. I don't know a lot about it, if I'm honest. That's part of what I need to do before I do my review video, really, is find out a bit more about it. I know about the game itself, but I don't know anything about the company or anything. Super Pokemon says, I still not gotten a Warcry team, and I'm thinking Night Goblins. I love Warcry, mate. I'm looking forward to the new, I forget what they're called now, the new kind of like Elf Assassin warband that's due soon. Really looking forward to that. Bizarre says, looking at Kickstarter. Or maybe they had another one coming, mate, and they cancelled it. I'm not really sure. I'll need to do a bit more digging into it. But it's not. This is basically a retail box that I've been sent here. This is available to buy now. It's not like a Kickstarter review or anything like that. You can physically go and buy what I've been sent. Pomsy saying, I saw on Twitter earlier $32.50 for the small box. Yeah, I think it is true, mate. Somebody was telling me. I think it was on the in the Patreon group today. They were talking about the prices. And I'm going to have to go way back somewhere here to get the prices. I think, was it £32, £55 and £95? I think were the price of the 3 starter boxes. I think that's what it was. Jacob says, when is the new edition of Bot Wars coming out? I've got no idea, mate. I don't know. Like I say, I've been sent this retail. This is available to buy in store now. It's nothing to do with any new stuff. It is basically just the 2nd edition starter set. So that's what I've got. If you can see this online anywhere, it basically says 2nd edition there in black writing. I'm not sure you'll be able to see that. But yeah, this is the 2nd edition version. So, right, folks, how are we doing for time? Oh, yeah, I'm going to have another drink now as well. My throat's drying out. So, yeah. So, folks, what else are you excited about at the minute? What are you interested in? What's on your hobby tables? What games are you looking forward to playing? Is there anything that you've seen coming from Gen Con? Any of the big companies been talking about stuff? Anything that you've that's kind of piqued your interest? I've kind of gone through a period of time where I didn't really have a lot to be making content around. But I think I mentioned this before. When I end up going full time, doing this. It was earlier than I anticipated, so I was a bit behind the curve, really. All of that work that I've put in is now starting to pay off, and the problem is I've had loads of stuff all come at once now, so now I'm kind of playing catch up because I've got to try and get this all kind of done and get videos. Pomsy saying, have you got your Endownter set yet, mate? Yes, it came last Monday, mate. I got that. Everything's built, nothing's painted yet. Steve says, have you managed to get any games with anybody else? Our club has been open for 3 weeks now, and it's great to be back. I've not, mate. I've not managed to get any games in with anybody else yet. Our local club isn't open yet. It's in a church hall, and the church isn't opening to like community groups yet. There's a local game store has opened up now, and it's starting to kind of get people in there. But to be honest, it doesn't feel very inviting at the minute. If I'm honest, I don't think I'm personally kind of ready to go back into like a gaming store to be playing yet. I think it's more about me, mate, to be fair, rather than the stores themselves. Michael saying, I want to know what you think about Pirates of the Dread Seas. Yeah, I've still got that review to do as well, mate. I finished painting them the other day, so they're all painted as well. I've got that review to do, so I've got Dread Seas to do. I've got a miniature agnostic game I was sent the rule book for it called Brutality. I've still got to come through that as well. So everything's just kind of come at once, mate, that's all. So I went from having pretty much nothing to everything. Lord Maiden says, Bot Wars has now piqued my interest. Dirk, good evening, Dirk, says, hope to play Reality's Edge soon. Vijay says he's taking a hobby break while he sets up the next round of mini swaps. Nice one. Bot Wars, good God, what are they good for? Stocky's Man Cave says, what's the epic encounter RPG thing you posted about? So this was from Gen Con, mate. This was Steamforged Games. They've basically got a thing called Epic Encounters, and essentially what they're doing is they are releasing sort of D&D 5e 5th edition like box sets, which are a self-contained like D&D adventure. And included in that set are all the miniatures that you need to play the adventure, plus like maps and sort of all of the story, the narrative, all of the player guides, everything else. Everything comes in one kind of self-contained box. And I think the idea is they will do multiple things of this over time. If you check out Steamforged Games, they did like a Gen Con like keynote speech. They talked about it in that, mate. It looked really interesting. And a guy I know, Richard August, I met him actually at Mantic. He was, me and him were basically played together when we did the Hellboy and Kickstarter play testing. He used to work kind of freelance and was doing work for Modiphius on their RPGs. And he went to work for Steamforged not too long ago. And he's obviously been working upon that in the background, yeah. So just really nice to kind of see somebody I know kind of being involved in some new stuff as well. Jason saying, oh man, I totally forgot about online Gen Con. Yeah, there's been loads of stuff this weekend, mate, hasn't there? Simon Davis says, cheers everyone off the bed. Thank you very much for coming in, mate. Much appreciated. Tony saying his Wild West Exodus box arrived. Nice one, mate. I'm glad they came. Tim Kelly says, X-Men announced for Marvel. They look mint. Kingpin, Daredevil, Punisher 2. Definitely got interested. Yeah, there's some nice stuff coming for that, mate. Steve's saying he's just started his 17th Army Night Stalkers. I can't believe there's anything you haven't already painted twice, mate. Matthew says, more War Gods of Olympus. Star Wars Legion almost finished with 2 skirmish forces. And he's pre-ordered the new Dead Zone stuff for the Astarians. Yeah, nice, mate. Ben saying they're back into lockdown in Melbourne. We're all right at the minute, actually, mate. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's relatively under control in the part of the UK I'm in. I was looking at some numbers the other day about how many cases there are per capita of different regions in the UK, and based upon how many people live in my region, which is like 210,000 people, there's basically 4 or 5 cases in total now. So it's pretty small in the grand scheme of things. The chances of me walking out my front door and catching coronavirus, are very, very low. However, it all still feels a bit weird because we've got like regions going on lockdown and stuff like that, and I think I'm probably just becoming a bit of a hermit now. I work from home. Like I don't feel the need to go out for much. My shopping gets delivered, and I think it's probably affecting me a bit now. I probably need to start getting out more. But like, because this is where I work, I almost feel like there's no need to go out at the minute. Where we're coming down. Tony said he's excited for his fighting fantasy figures from Atlantis during September. It was a pure nostalgic back-end, but Atlantis makes some beautiful minis. Atlantis do make some really nice minis, mate. Pomsy said, have you ever been interested in Gaslands? I bought the original Gaslands book, mate. I played a few games of it. But I think the fact that it's just toy cars, I think, was probably the bit that kind of switched me off. I just, it's like, I think it's a really good idea. I like it as a game. But I like miniatures, and I like sitting painting miniatures, and I think that's why it's never really been one of those things for me. Peter says Goblin Games told me today that his set was being posted, but he got a set from his backup pre-order supplier weekend before last. I did the same, mate. I ended up cancelling my Goblin Games one when the other one came. I got an email today to say that they'd cancelled my order and I was getting a refund, because I managed to pick one up from somewhere else. So I don't need 2 copies of it. There's no point me trying to like get the second copy and selling it on to somebody else. I'd rather somebody else got a chance to buy it from the retailer. Jason says, I'm still too scared of the Rona to play at game shops. I think that's kind of where I am, mate. It's almost like I've got everything I need here. I think I'd rather just play at home with the people that I know and trust, if you like. Simon says, I'm currently gluing some WoW Exodus minis together from the Gunfighter at Red Oak starter. More glue on my fingers than the minis. Yes. Super Punk Man saying Atlantis. Yeah, Atlantis minis, mate. Check them out. They basically just make like sort of resin miniatures, but they're absolutely fantastic sculpts. Coxie saying, looking forward to a God tier review. Had my eye on that for a while. I've actually got, bear with me, I just want to grab something. I actually have this, which isn't out yet. So this is Kira, the Dragon Princess and Young Dragons, which is available to pre-order at the minute, and I think it basically ships middle of August. So this is this is Kira, the Dragon Princess. So I'll very quickly just kind of open it and show you. So this is Kira herself. I'll obviously go and get it. And then we've got these couple of little dragons, which are very nice. I'll put that in front of my face so it focuses on those. And then her banner is kind of like a dragon coming out of an egg, which obviously is floating on my face. If I cover my eyes, it might focus. Nah, screw it. We'll do a proper video of it. But yeah, so I've actually managed to get my hands on something that is not out yet. But yeah, they were really kind actually. They've sent me the 2 starter boxes to take a look at, and then they also sent me Black Joe as well, with a set for that as well. So I've got plenty of stuff to be getting on with and get some games played and get some reviews done as well. Palmsy said, I reckon Andy has got an Audi in real life. That's my guess. Do you know what it is, mate? I don't have a car. My car went back. I had a company car and it went back. I actually used to have some. I mean, I'm fortunate. The company I worked for, basically, I had a company car with my job for probably the last 12 years or something like that. The car that just went back recently, I had an Audi A1, mate. There you go. So I did have an Audi. But I had Mercedes before that. I used to have I had an E-Class before that, but I just didn't need a big car. I hardly did as many miles as I used to. So yeah, I basically picked the cheapest car that was on my company car list, which was an Audi A1. See, that's interesting. I thought you would like modding the toy cars. Too fiddly, mate. They're too small and stuff. And modding them with what? I'd end up having to try and find like bits of guns from bit boxes and stuff like that. I don't really kind of keep bits boxes because I don't really enjoy that kind of kit bashing stuff, if I'm honest. I like to just build a model. VGC in Gaslands is awesome fun. I have zero interest in cars, but I like the conversion in the game. Yeah, the conversion thing doesn't interest me, mate. If you want to have a go, we can play on Tabletop Simulator. I didn't realise there was a Tabletop Simulator mod for it, mate. Barry says the new Gaslands book is great. The fun is in customising the cars, but really fun game to play. Yeah, that's the reason it hasn't really interested me. But War, good evening. I feel sorry for game stores at the moment. Must be super tough for them. Good evening. We've just been talking about you, my friend. I was just showing everybody what arrived today. It's like your ears were burning. Thank you very much. Yeah, I see. I feel sorry for game stores at the moment. It must be super tough for them. I think, to be honest, mate, in the UK, the vast majority of them have been doing quite a bit of stuff online with like online sales and stuff like that. So I'm sure they've been kind of hurt, but those with online retail sales won't have been hurt as much as they could have been. It's the ones that don't have any online presence, and the fact that the clarity around reopening hasn't been the best for them, to be fair. 6 in the head, Audi Estate. I would never try an Audi Estate. Blizzard says, I went into a friendly looking game store on Friday and neither the proprietor nor one other customer were masked up. Yeah, I mean, the rules changing all the time as well, mate. So I forget whereabouts you are again in UK. Yeah, Vici saying Princess and Young Dragons, speaking of infringing on IP. Yeah, definitely, mate. William Jones is saying, nice, like the variety of poses and incarnations of the dragons. Ben says, very interesting God tier. Dan Hughes has been talking about a lot. It's a game that really interested me, mate, but I've been super critical of Steamforged, to be fair, and it felt like the game basically kind of disappeared without a trace. I think one of the issues was they had plans around kind of organised play and stuff, and then obviously coronavirus has come along and basically kind of just stopped that dead in its tracks. You can play it on Tabletopia for free. They managed to they basically put it online so people could play it, and so that their own people could play test on it as well. And I think it's starting to kind of get back like sort of up and running again now. So yeah, I'm super keen. I mean, I've read through the rules, and it seems really straightforward to play. Lots of tactics in it, and at some point after I've kind of done a review of this, I'll probably do like a video about those kind of arena combat games. So we've got games like God Tier, we've got things like Beastgrave, we've got Aristea, we've got Riot Quest. There's quite a lot of games around that kind of like arena combat combination of cards and dice and sort of type games. So I'll probably do some kind of like comparison video once I know a bit more about this one. Super Punkin Man says, I still have not watched Game of Thrones. Yeah, me either, mate. I never got all the way through it. Michael's saying, get BlackJack on your side, he's a monster. Yeah, they basically kind of they said, I'll send you 2 starter boxes, I'll send you Kira, and then just pick one other. And BlackJack looked a cool miniature, mate, so I went for Ruler Cool. Palm says, I'm a genius. I honestly, mate, I literally got it because it was the cheapest car on the list, because we have a list of cars we can choose from. But actually, I was really pleased with it. It was nice. Jason saying, have you tried God Tier yet? No, mate, I did plan to have a game at the weekend with my wife, but we sat and watched the film and had a bottle of wine instead. Pomsy saying it's €100 fine here for not wearing a mask. It's meant to be enforced here, mate, but essentially there are loopholes, or basically you don't have to kind of you don't have to, what's the word I'm looking for? Exceptions. There's some exemptions, basically. Josh Hunter says, God Tier is cool, but it's dense. Reminds me very much of the density of their flagship game, Guild Ball, but if not as intense. It's interesting because I think it can be as tactically deep as you want it to be. If you just want to have a bit of fun, you can certainly kind of just have a bit of fun with it. But I can see it's the interest is in the combinations, and you basically you can play with kind of one champion against one champion and their followers. But I think at like kind of competitive level, it's like 3 champions versus 3 champions, and there's no factions, so you can just pick the champions you like, and that's where you kind of get in and look at the synergies between different champions and how things can work and stuff. But to be fair, that's exactly how Super Fantasy Brawl plays as well, and I really enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to that arriving. That's another one to kind of put in the comparison mix as well. I actually quite like Guild Ball as well. I think it's just the fact that if you play it super competitively, you really need to be on your game kind of thing. Blizzard says, US, and he's in Oregon, we're all supposed to mask up in businesses. I wouldn't have bothered, but gas desperately is needed at Agrex. Yeah, it's funny, mate. There's all sorts of funny rules here as well, like, but I kind of went shopping at the weekend, like for a tour coleslaw randomly, and wore a mask for the first time because I'd not been anywhere to have to wear one. And it feels really weird, actually. Like it's a really it's uncomfortable, but not from physical uncomfort on my face. Just the fact that it feels weird about my face being covered up when I'm talking to people. Yeah, Luke's in Super Fantasy Brawl 2. Yeah, I forgot about that, mate, yeah. Tiberius is saying, good evening, mate, by the way. He says, thing about indie stores is that if they weren't open for online during the lockdown, they're pretty much the only ones with stock in now. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, mate, to be fair. Super Pumpkin Man saying, here, everyone has to wear a mask, or most places will not allow entrance. But here we've had 13,000 plus cases in the city. Yeah, it's relatively low here, to be fair. Like in my region, it's not necessarily low all over the UK. I think the reason it's pretty low here is we're not like a tourist spot. It's not like if you get a nice day, like tourists travel here from anywhere else. So it's not like, I think it's relatively kind of being self-contained in my sort of small part of the UK. But also says Game of Thrones died pretty quickly after season 4. I think that's what kind of put me off, basically, is that there were already a lot of seasons before I decided to start watching it, and I was kind of enjoying it, and basically the entire world kind of told me that it got worse, and I think I just thought, why am I fighting through this? And I think that's why I never end up watching it. Tiberius Wallace says, Anthony has promised you a twat. Thanks, mate. Barry Kleiber says, I've never seen one episode of Game of Thrones. King of Thrones, even. I've seen about 2.5 seasons, something like that. Chuck and Deb Taylor says, thanks for a great chat. Nice to talk about something beside the elephant in the room. Yeah, it's nice to mix things up, isn't it? It's nice to talk about different stuff. Yoakum says, I have a starter set of God tier and played a few games. Really like the game, but the minis are made of soft plastic, so the swords, spears, etc. bend. Need to buy more teams. Yeah, I think the beauty of this game is basically because they're let me just get some bits out. Because they're single piece plastics, you basically you can just buy one and play. Because they're coloured plastics as well, the colours represent different kind of things that the miniatures can do as well. But I mean, there's a bit of a bend to them. This has got quite a big axe though, to be fair. But I think the sculpts are good for kind of like single piece plastics, and I don't think these sets are particularly expensive, to be fair. So, but we'll come into that when I do a bit more digging and we'll do a full review as well. Pomsy said, I live in an area with very steep hills, so I like wearing the mask because people can't see how much I'm gasping for breath. Tony says, I looked at both God Tier and Super Fantasy Brawl. Both kind of did the same, but Super Fantasy Brawl was prettier. Yeah, and I really hope when they arrive, mate, I hope they're as pretty as the resin prints that I saw. Dirk says, we went shopping in the Netherlands today. There you don't have to wear masks in the shops, while here in Germany, 50 kilometres away, you have to. Jason said, I've been eyeing Guild Ball lately. Wish we heard more from Steamforge on the future of the game. My gut feeling is purely just as somebody in the hobby is that it's probably one of them games that's not run its course. I don't think that's fair to say, but I think it's kind of like it's peak interest has kind of passed now, and that I think kind of God Tier was the game that was kind of meant to take over that mantle for Steamforged. And obviously coronavirus has kind of slowed that down a little bit. I don't think it's the end for Guild Ball. I mean, if you're only just getting into the game, there's a lot of stuff available for it. Do you know what I mean? And it's all relevant to what's your local player base like. Can you get games of it? Because it doesn't matter if a game is sort of brand new yesterday or 10 years old. If you can buy stuff for it and you've got people you can play against, then it's a new game to you, isn't it, really? Peter saying, here the rules are fun. Need to wear a mask when you take a walk, but if you walk fast enough, it's counted as sports, and you don't have to wear one. One of the strange rules we've got here is, if you go into a restaurant and you order a takeaway, you have to wear a mask. But if you're going into a restaurant to sit down and eat the food, you don't have to wear a mask. So I think that's one of those kind of weird things. I appreciate you can't wear a mask when you're eating food, but it's like you don't have to wear it at all. It's not like you've got to wear it until you sit down. It's like a local gaming store. Essentially, if you're going in to play games, you don't have to wear a mask. But if you're going to shop in the shop part of the gaming store, you have to wear a mask because that part is a shop. All those kind of things. VG says, you mean the northeast of England isn't a tourist mecca? I never would have guessed. You'd be surprised, mate. Newcastle itself gets a lot of kind of visitors, if you like, especially for its nightlife. It's world renowned for its nightlife. It's just the part of like Newcastle where I am. I'm out on the coast, and it's a beautiful place. Like one of the beaches here was voted like the second or third best beach in the UK, but it's just the weather's never good enough. That's the problem. It's never warm enough, and it's too far north for kind of for people down south to come up when they very very quickly go to somewhere like Brighton or something like that. So yeah, we don't get a lot of kind of like UK tourists coming in. There's a lot of history in the northeast. Obviously, this is where the Vikings landed and stuff like that. So there's a lot of history in the northeast. The Romans, obviously, with Hadrian's Wall coming across. So yeah, it's a lot of historical sites and stuff. But it's not like if you live in the UK, and especially as people are not really travelling abroad on holidays, you're not really going to kind of come and visit it. So, and especially with pubs being closed, nobody's coming for the nightlife. So essentially, what's happened is, from a virus point of view, we're not really going anywhere. Nobody's coming here. So I think it's been relatively under control. Matthew saying the mask can be psychologically uncomfortable. I think that's what it is, mate. Yeah. But was saying, sorry, only joined. No, it's fine, mate. Absolutely fine. I was just literally saying about some of the things I've got coming up. That everything seems to have arrived at once. I've got about like 10 things has all arrived in about the last week. But was in this last 5 minutes was all the Kickstarter discussion at the start. It was, mate. We talked about it for about an hour and a half, up to about 10:30. So yeah, sorry you missed it, buddy. 6 in the head says, I joke about the north, but if I ever move back to England, I'd probably move up there. Seems like a good hobby scene. Yeah, it's not bad actually, mate, to be fair. It's not bad at all. Nostock is Luxembourg, you have to wear a mask even when the waiter comes to your table. I'm kind of surprised that's like not a thing here, like take it off to eat kind of thing. Tiberius says, I don't actually mind rules evolving into something else if it's using the same models. Keeps it fresh. Yeah, I get that. Michael says, you're allowed to go to the prostitutes unmasked, kissing and all the other stuff you do there, but when you are with 4 non-family in a car, you get fined. I saw something on the news about that, about the red light districts in Amsterdam reopening. Paul Eamon, good evening, mate. He says, there's definitely tourism in the northeast. Northumberland is beautiful. It is, mate, but it's not like people are not flocking there like they're flocking to like the Lake District, or they're not going there like they're going down to Brighton at the minute when the weather's nice, or down to Bournemouth. Michael says, I live in Whitley Bay and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I didn't realise you were Whitley Bay, mate. Yeah, I love the area. I put a picture in the in our Patreon group at the weekend saying, do you know what it is? Like when the weather's nice here, there is absolutely no other place I'd want to be. It's just a beautiful part of the world. It's just the fact that it's not a tourist hotspot, if you like. Like purely because the weather's pretty garbage in general. VG saying second best beach in the UK. I guess that puts things in perspective. There are some absolutely beautiful beaches in the UK, mate. It's just that the weather's never good enough to appreciate them. Lord Maiden saying, I'll come and visit you. There you go, mate. Butterworth says, I love how the English are so proud of their beaches. It's because they're just like essential. We don't even go to the beach. Like, it's only because of lockdown, because nobody's going on holiday. That's why everybody's going to the beach. Tiberius says, bizarrely, Newcastle City is often the stop off for tourists heading north for the East Coast main line. Yeah, because we got a big train station there, mate, to be fair. 6 it says Lake District is lovely for a holiday if you're a millionaire. Vicious. You talk funny as well. You do talk funny, mate. Tiberius is saying, you think Scottish folk would go down for the warmer weather? We used to, Whitley Bay, mate, which is kind of like a seaside town like next to me, used to be a really popular place for the Scots to come down. Like, they used to come down for like stag do's, and they would come down for like bank holiday Monday drinking and stuff. We used to get a lot of Scottish people would come down for that. But what says the in-laws go to the Lake District every year. It's a beautiful place, mate. Beautiful. Fiji says he's coming over so he can flog me Blitz Paul. Paul says the fact that people aren't flocking to Northumberland like they do to the Lake District only adds to its attraction. I'll be visiting Chillingham Castle in September. Yeah, Chillingham Castle's beautiful, to be fair, mate. I'm going off to Alnwick Castle soon as well. There's some stuff there about dinosaurs and stuff that I want to take the little boy to and stuff. So yeah, hopefully it stays quiet. And Tony saying Northumberland, one of Britain's best kept secrets. I love the place. Yes, mate. It definitely is. And with that, I'm kind of like 10 minutes a bit longer than I was going to talk. So we'll call it a night. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming in tonight. I hope kind of the stuff I was talking about on Kickstarter kind of opened your eyes a little bit, made you a bit more aware of it, made you understand the difference between some of the big companies and like why they do it versus kind of the smaller companies and why you should kind of support them. Pomsey saying, any guests on Wednesday's chat? I think I'm going to just do it myself, mate. It'd be nice to do one on my own for a change. I think the boys are here, to be fair. I think they're coming over tomorrow. So if one of them wants to join in, I think they certainly can. But I think I'm just going to do it on my Todd, mate, I think. And that's it, folks. VJ saying later, I'll see you all on the Discord. Yes, folks, if anybody does want to join the Discord channel, you join by basically being part of the Patreon group. So yeah, if you join Patreon from as little as $2 per month, you'll get access to the Patreon chat. And it's essentially just folks chatting away like they have been in here tonight. Thank you again, Christian, for sharing that. I will see you all on Wednesday's Hobby Hangout. And now, the next few days, I am going to be feverishly working away in the background, trying to get some of this stuff ready for some videos. So I'll catch you soon. See you Wednesday. Thanks for watching my video. I hope that you really enjoyed it. And if you did, why not consider clicking on the suggested video below to see more of the work that I've done. If you'd like to support the long-term sustainability of this channel, why not consider checking out my Patreon, where you can pledge and support from as little as $2 a month. And there is lots of different tiers and bonuses, which will give you access to a private Discord server. It will give you free t-shirts, free mugs, a podcast every month, and a number of other things, including getting your name at the end of every video, like these awesome folks who already support me now.